Hello and welcome back everyone, we Weeb Online, and today I'm gonna continue the story What If Naruto Had Madara and Kurama Sealed Inside Him, Part 2. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a big thumbs up, and to watch more videos like this, subscribe to my channel and turn that bell notification on so you never miss an upload. Now wasting no more time, let's begin.
After a month, Naruto emerged from an alleyway, peered left and right, and then stepped out, getting ready to cross the street stealthily. Since it was still early in the morning and all of Konoha's stores had just opened, breakfast would be excellent and the baked goods would be fresh. If he managed to get away with stealing it, that is. Naruto had no choice but to turn to stealing in order to survive because he had no money, nowhere to live, no one to mentor him, and no food. Eating from dumpsters and trash cans outside of restaurants was, after all, only so good until he got sick or got caught. Two things that had happened to him far too frequently for him to repeat the mistake. The proprietors of the eateries appeared to believe that he, the demon thief, as they had started to refer to him, could not even handle their outdoor trash. His only choice had been to pilfer fresh food, but along with that came fame, a kind of fame he didn't want. He was immediately identified as a demon thief by the public, and he was sometimes physically assaulted until he was either unconscious or covered in blood. He occasionally questioned why they never carried out their threats to kill him and beat him. Maybe they didn't want to get caught. Consequently, he must have been valuable if his passing put them in danger, isn't that right? It indicated that at least one person was concerned about his well-being, or that murder was prohibited. For Naruto, intelligence came along with poverty and life's cruelties. Despite his youth, he had to learn many lessons the hard way, lessons that other children his age wouldn't pick up until much later in life. He learned how to start a fire at the age of 4 because he occasionally had to go in search of animals, like rabbits, and roast them over the fire. He was knowledgeable about where to steal, when to steal it, and how to steal it. He was able to navigate Konoha and identify crucial locations so he would never get lost. It had truly paid off to read all those books in the orphanage, and he was certain he would have passed away without the additional knowledge. Naruto let out a heavy breath as the orphanage flooded back into his consciousness. He hated the place itself, but he also loved it because that's where he met Hinata Senju, his one and only precious friend from the past. He had no idea where she was, but one day he would locate her, develop his strength, save her, and the two of them would flee together. If she felt the need to. The idea that there is one precious person who likes him, Hinata, was the only thing keeping Naruto from leaping off skyscrapers and ending everything. He wondered about her and her well-being on a constant basis. And he wondered if she felt the same way. Although he wasn't sure he wanted her to know, he was aware that she didn't know where he lived. After all, it was crucial that no one knew where he lived. After stealing his food, he needed to make sure he had somewhere to hide. He also needed a place to sleep in that would protect him from the elements and from Konoha at night. He had successfully taken food on multiple occasions, only to be caught soon after when he sat down to eat it. It was only after a month of living in this amazing village called Konoha that he realized he needed a place of his own where he could take refuge and hide. At the moment, he was lodging there, outside the world, in a back alley. His new house was the ideal place for him to live. It led far back along the side of an abandoned building. It was more than just an alley. But at the end of this alley was a big hole that led to a secret area that Naruto had found one day. He didn't know how the hole got there, but it was big enough for him to walk into by ducking. He had discovered when he had entered that hole that the majority of the massive 5-story building had collapsed and been destroyed, leaving him with very little room inside the structure itself. However, it was more than sufficient for him. It felt like a cave or cavern of his own. Even if someone entered through the main building entrance, they would still be unable to enter there because it was caved in on all other sides save his alley hole. It was amazing. When he used the wood he had collected to build a fire inside, he was shielded from the cold and the rain. In addition to the fallen rubble and caved-in blocks, he had his pillow, a stolen blanket, several stolen books, and other miscellaneous items in there. Naruto possessed intelligence. He knew that this hole would be noticed if someone followed him into the alleyway. Anticipating future needs, he proceeded to swipe a blanket from an outdoor hook and covered the opening to conceal it from being easily noticed as dirt. It would have to do for now, even though he knew he would need to take further steps to conceal it. At this moment, Naruto had left his hiding place and moved to the end of his alleyway, taking care to ensure that nobody saw him leave. He nodded to himself as he hurried across the street and toward the bakery in an attempt to steal some of the freshly made bread for breakfast. It's him. It's the demon thief. He stole my bread. When the owner called Naruto out, yelling his alias as he hurried out the door, he had barely left the store. With a silent curse, he ran as fast as he could down the sidewalk, his only goal being to reach his hiding place before anyone could find him. Naruto skillfully avoided people as he swerved through the morning crush, successfully rounding the corner to the next street. The cries of, "Which way did he go?" could be heard by him, behind him, only making him sprint even harder. His alleyway was fortunately close by, so he turned into it and ran down it at full speed before anyone saw him or caught up to him. He reached for his blanket on the wall and glanced back down the alley to make sure no one was watching. He nodded to himself as he dashed through the blanket and through the wall's secret opening to reach his hiding place. He sighed and took deep breaths, making sure the blanket remained in place. He held his breath when he heard footsteps coming from outside the alleyway, and then he sighed once more as they went by without incident. He turned around and crossed the room of his shadowy hideout, setting the bread down in front of the hearth. He carried a box of matches and lit a number of candles as he strolled around. For him, matches were very essential since they made starting fires simple and very helpful. One of his most valuable items was boxes, so he made sure to steal plenty of them. He scowled as he saw the smoke ascend to the air and realized he needed to give the area more ventilation to prevent smoke buildup. That was a task for a different day, though. He approached the spot where he had set the bread and took a seat, gathering up his meager provisions. Satisfied he had found breakfast, he grinned to himself after taking a bite out of it. Conan, who was 15 years old, was relieved to be able to leave the pouring rain outside as she entered the cave that served as their covert hideout. She scattered the paper umbrella she had made and ventured deeper into the cave in search of Yahiko, her one and only true friend. It was a mere minute later that she saw her orange-headed friend, who was sitting on the ground with his back to the entrance and his legs crossed. Report. Conan sighed, nervously looking away as she put her hands behind her back, despite the fact that Yahiko wasn't even looking at her. They died, all of them. Hanzo must have known that they were coming, because. She broke off her speech as she felt the room tremble violently, as though there had been an earthquake. But she sensed that her seated friend was radiating a strong chakra flow, so she knew differently. Yahiko stopped shaking after taking a deep breath. He slowly got to his feet and turned to face Conan, his orange-tinted Rinnegan eyes full of tears. He walked over to her and said dryly, "Then. That's it. First our families, then our followers, then Nagato, and now everyone who stood with us is dead. Even Jiraiya-sensei has abandoned us." Conan shook her head clumsily, detesting the hopeless expression she could see in his aching eyes. She yelled, "No," at him while holding onto his shirt. "Don't you give up hope on me. You're all I have left now. All we have is each other. We can still change the world, together, you and I." Gazing down into his best friend's deep dark blue eyes, Yahiko couldn't help but smile. I haven't given up hope. I made a promise to Nagato, that we would change the world, and if that means that I have to become a god, then so be it. Someday, we'll break this curse of war that covers the land. If there's such a thing as peace, then I'll find it. Conan grinned as well, dabbing at her tears as she turned to face Yahiko. It starts with Hanzo. I'll become stronger, strong enough to kill him, and then I will become the leader of Rain. And from there, I'll have the village under my hand, and I'll go beyond that. In order to stop wars, I'll create another gang, a smaller one, with stronger and more reliable members. I'll search the nations for them, picking out the strongest people from each village. The two teenagers, who had gone through experiences no one their age should have had to go through, sat down and held each other for warmth while they silently gazed out of the cave together, taking in the scene's eerie atmosphere created by the unceasingly heavy rain. In a more upbeat voice, Yahiko said, "I will become God," putting his arm around Conan and embracing her. "I'll use my gift, and I'll be able to do whatever my mind can think of. I'll be able to protect you at all times, see everything at once, I'll be able to be anywhere in the blink of an eye." Conan laughed and tucked himself closer to him. She asked him in jest, her glowing orbs illuminating him, "Maybe you can do all of that, but will you be able to stop all this rain from falling, if you're God?" With a smile on her face, Yahiko peered up at the dark skies as lightning streaked across the horizon. Yes, I'll even be able to stop this cursed rain, and when that happens, we'll finally be able to see the glorious red dawn that has forever eluded us. Yes, the daybreak, I like the sound of that. Konoha, evening, half a year later as Hinata sat in her room, dusting off her expensive dress and sitting on her bed, gazing out the window, she sighed softly to herself. Her lone companion on the bed was her beloved plush fox doll, Kitsune. She turned 5 years old today, and it was her 5th birthday. Additionally, the Hyuga clan was inviting the entire clan to a formal dinner party as part of their celebration of her. Not the entire clan, exactly. As you can see, Hinata discovered over the course of several months that the Hyuga were, in fact, split into 2 families. The main family and the branch family. The Hyuga gave the impression of being essentially 2 distinct clans combined. Hinata made the snap decision to dislike this division among the clan as soon as she heard about it. Furthermore, she discovered that she genuinely detested the division after learning more about it. She had been adopted into the main branch, which was headed by the Hyuga clan. They received the best of everything, just like the royalty of the clan. They acquired better jutsu, had better meals, and slept in better accommodations. Conversely, the branch family wasn't even middle class. No, Hinata was deeply repulsed by the fact that they resembled the main family's servants. Unlike when they cooked for the main family, they had to cook for themselves. They were forced to sleep in worse and cramped quarters. They had to perform all of the grubby labor when cleaning the compound. Not even the sacred Hyuga techniques could they learn. However, Hinata's greatest dislike was the Juinjutsu of the Hyuga family, also referred to as the cursed mark. All of the branch members had this curse placed on their foreheads, which is said to have sealed away their Byakugan, the Hyuga Kekkei Genkei, when they passed away. However, Hinata realized that its true goal was to maintain the branch members' subservience to the main members. Hinata didn't even want to recall what had happened when these marks were activated. She first saw this mark when she was with Neji Hyuga, a boy who was supposed to be her servant, but was actually a year older. She was first apprehensive about this idea, but Neji reassured her that he was delighted to be assigned to such a significant person and that it was an honor to be her servant. She would only truly enjoy herself with Neji among the clan members. The 2 of them had evolved into something akin to friends. He would always be kind to her and treat her with respect. He was a generally happy boy. He also served as her bodyguard. One day, Hinata was practicing Juken, the Hyuga Taijutsu, in a dojo. It was very hard for her to learn their fighting style without the Byakugan, but she wasn't exactly slowed down because Hyuga kids her age typically couldn't use their Byakugan until they were at least 6 years old. But the cruelty of the curse mark was obvious to her even without the aid of the Hyuga's all-seeing eyes. Flashback. 6 months ago Neji Hyuga, who had walked with young Hinata Senju, followed her into the training dojo. Neji, her personal protector, had been given to her ever since she was adopted into this clan. She didn't know why someone so young would have to defend her, but she had to accept it even though he was a year older than her. After all, Hiyashi-sama had stated that it was a Hyuga clan custom. Hiyashi said, "Ah, you have finally arrived," as he watched the young couple enter his dojo. Neji's father, Hizashi, who is also Hiyashi's twin, was seated on one side of the room and grinning subtly at the 2. Hinata had often wished that Hizashi was the head of the clan because he was always so kind to her and the other members. She thought of him as the father she never had in so many ways. Despite being a member of the branch family, Neji would always smile and express his pride when she spoke about Hizashi to him. Given that Neji was without a mother, the 2 became very close. Moving toward the middle of the dojo, Hinata stood in front of Hiyashi, gazing up at him while attempting to hide her fear. From the beginning, she had realized that displaying fear in front of Hiyashi was a grave mistake, as Hiyashi detested any kind of hesitation. Even though Hanabi was only 2 years old and had just learned to walk, he taught her to be fierce and strong. "You," Hiyashi said, shifting her focus back to the front. "You look just like a Hyuga. If I didn't know you were a Senju, I would assume you were already from my clan. Your face, your hair is the same, though it is a different color, and your eyes, they share a resemblance with our clan, except for that they don't have the pale look that adorn all of us." With nothing else to do, Hinata nodded. Was it ironic in any way that she was adopted by the Hyuga and had their appearance? She was clueless and pondered what Naruto might say. Very well. I taught you the simple Juken defense and offense forms for the past month, and as I assumed, you were able to learn them well, due to your blood. But now I want to see what you can do in a real fight. Come at me with everything you've learned. Treat this as a real battle. With a nod, Hinata assumed the newly taught stance and lunged towards Hiashi, returning her palm to her hips in the process. She was taken aback when she got close to him because he remained motionless and did not attempt to block anything, so she slightly withdrew her blow. She struck him in the stomach with perfect form, she thought, thrusting her palm forward. When Hinata finally looked up to see what Hiashi was doing after a few moments, she was shocked to see that he was staring down at her with a look of rage in his eyes. Was her blow to him too severe? Before she could even remove her hand from her stomach a few moments later. Smack! Hinata was knocked across the room by Hiashi's backhand and painfully landed on the dojo's outer edge. Neji got up right away, and Hisashi, with a severe expression and a deep frown, was holding him tightly. Hiashi turned icily to face Neji, who was attempting to assist Hinata, as she coughed and put her hand to her red, teary face. With a low, menacing voice, he spoke cruelly, "Restrain him, brother, or I will restrain him for you." Hisashi nodded slowly, making Neji sit down in a rage. A few moments later, Hinata stumbled to her feet and sobbed aloud as she looked shocked at Hiashi. Hiashi called out to her, "I told you to approach me as if this were a real battle. What you did was pathetic. Now I will ask you once more. Come at me with all you have. And wipe those tears away. Hyugas don't cry." With hesitation, Hinata nodded and put on her training clothes to wipe away her tears before going back into fighting stance. She charged at Hiashi again, making sure to give it her all this time. When she got to him, she withdrew her hand once more and delivered a powerful palm strike to his stomach. But Hiashi took another swing at her wrist, slamming it away and pushing her back instead of just taking it. He walked over to face her and gave her the order, "Your attacks should be swift and quick. Now, show me what you have learned from a defensive stance." Hiashi approached Hinata, who nodded and swallowed hard, taking a defensive position. He turned and sent his foot toward her face when he got close enough, but she rolled to the side to avoid it. She shot her a cold glare in return. "Do not dodge. Parry. Block my attacks with Juken form." He attacked her once more, throwing a straightforward punch in her direction, but she was surprisingly quick to parry it by raising her hands to block his wrist just in time. Hiashi struck again, but this time Hinata parried the blow with agonizing ease. Hiashi persisted, hitting Hinata with painful, pulled-back blows that she could hardly parry. This continued for a minute, but she was thrown forcefully back, landing on the ground again, unable to raise her arms in time. He yelled, "Endure," at her. "Stand up and take your stance again." Hinata rose slowly, her own weight buckling her knees. As Hiashi approached her, she struggled to keep her eyes open and was unable to even raise her arms. A loud smacking sound sounded throughout the room, so he withdrew his hand. She closed her eyes, and at last she threw her arms to shield her face. When Hinata opened her eyes again, she was shocked to see Neji in front of her, blocking Hiashi's attack with a flawless Juken form. This was shocking to her at such a young age, especially since he was related to the branch family. When Hiashi lifted the boy with one arm and held him in the air while glaring down at him while activating his Byakugan, she gasped in shock. He said, coldly, "I told you not to interfere," dismissing Neji's feeble attempts to comply. "Very well. I see that you have grown rebellious. It is time I introduce you to the cursed seal." Hiashi exclaimed, getting up and sprinting towards them. "Hiashi, don't." With his eyes fixed on Neji, Hiashi shook his head. "This is a tradition that must be held. Hinata, pay close attention as I show you what really separates the branch family from the main family. You will listen to my orders, either in respect or in fear. Activate." When Neji screamed loudly and held his head in agony, his legs began to fly around as Hiashi continued to hold him up in the air, causing Hinata's eyes to fill with horror. As Hinata watched helplessly as Neji screamed more, tears streamed down her face. In an instant, Hisashi materialized in front of her, snatching Neji from Hiashi's grasp and forcing the headmaster to retreat. He collapsed to the ground, holding his forehead while he consoled his screaming son, who was still yelling as loudly as he could. "Why? You?" Hiashi yelled, giving his own brother a menacing glare. Activate. Finale flashback holding her own arms. Hinata shuddered as she replayed the memory in her mind. She had probably never seen anything so cruel as the curse mark. Because of the mark on their foreheads, the branch members were effectively slaves to the main house. She knew that Naruto would detest it just as much as she did. She pondered what her friend would do in her situation. Most likely, he would. Hinata-sama. Hinata heard Neji's voice from outside the door, and her head shot up. Are you ready? You have to go now. Hinata leapt from her bed and fluttered the linens to restore its elegance. Hi. I'm coming. After hurriedly running to her bathroom to check that everything looked well, including her hair, she hurried out of her room to say goodbye to Kitsune and greet Neji before heading to her elegant dinner party. Even though it was her birthday, Hiyashi-sama disapproved of her bringing him to any significant meetings. She briefly pondered how Naruto, who was a little older than her, had celebrated his birthday. She yearned for the day they would cross paths again and wondered where he was, how he was doing, and how much she missed him. The domain of Naruto. Dinner time. 5-year-old Naruto, wearing tan shorts and a black t-shirt with an orange spiral on it, called out this seemingly cheerful phrase to no one in particular. Raising himself from his mattress, he sighed with gratitude and surveyed his room, taking in the delightful scent of deer roasting in the fireplace. He had been expelled from the orphanage more than 6 months ago. He had really changed, mentally and physically. He was physically a little taller and had longer blonde hair than before. He'd gained some muscle tone as well, though nothing particularly noticeable. Unbelievably, he was probably eating a better diet than he was receiving from the orphanage. In addition to stealing nutrient-dense foods that he had researched and knew would make him stronger and taller, he had to hunt down animals, which was a good intake of protein for muscle. He'd become as sharp mentally as the pilfered kunai he'd used to skin the deer he'd killed. He knew Konoha like the back of his hand, having almost memorized every route in just 6 months. He was aware of what foods to pilfer, as well as when and where to do it. When he did try to steal them, he was skilled at avoiding even Chunin-ranked ninja. Furthermore, he had familiarized himself with the ninja system. He was aware of the various ninja ranks, their power levels, and their typical jobs. Even though he was only 5 years old, he was usually able to outrun the middle-aged and young adults who made up the Chunin, despite their lack of talent. The gifted group Jonin came next, and he was unable to outrun them. He would have to trick them with something very cunning, or run through narrow passageways that only he could fit through, in order to get away from them, which he did multiple times. Aside from the village chief, the highest-ranking ninja were members of Anbu, or occasionally the Uchiha police force. Those guys used to chase him after he would do something really bad, like steal something valuable. They had only managed to track him down 3 times, and he had only once, quite astonishingly, managed to escape them. When they had last pursued him, it was after he had taken a big, very big, box of explosive tags and, in an attempt to get away from the Jonin, had set up an alleyway with them. When he detonated them all, he injured multiple Chunin and a Jonin. They had prompted several Anbu backup who were patrolling nearby by injuring one of the Chunin, and the chase had restarted. Naruto had actually passed through multiple buildings, sewers, and secret rooms before hiding in the Hokage monument. That's where he was at the moment. His former hiding place was abandoned. It was only meant to serve as a backup plan in case he needed one. Naruto discovered a trapdoor in a large rock behind a tree on top of the monument, hidden from view. This door led to a secret tunnel that took Naruto directly behind the Hokage's monument. This location was amazing. The monument's actual room was enormous. It was a spacious area, nearly as large as the summit of the mountain, large enough to encompass the area of the 4 faces. When Naruto realized it, he was so shocked that he almost passed out. Though he suspected there must be a room back here, he had no idea it would be this large. When Naruto was first apprehended by the Chunin, he was brought before a man known as the Hokage, who gave him a lecture and assigned him to community service. A task he would have to perform each time he was caught until he attained the rank of Genin, the lowest level of ninja, at which point he would be sentenced to prison if he stole a lot more. Curious about the man, Naruto crept into the library and studied several scrolls of the Hokage, discovering that they were the men whose faces were carved into the massive mountain. After that, he researched the monument's past and discovered that a group of Konoha-based Earth-style masters had carved it. The intriguing bit, though, was a brief line that mentioned that they also carved the mountain's backside to make it easier to read the details. Using the same steps that Hinata and he had taken so many years before, Naruto approached the monument. There, he discovered an additional hidden star cluster that led to the mountainside, directly across from the first Hokage's visage. Excitedly, Naruto tried to open the door there, which was out of sight for everyone because it was nearly behind the Hokage's head. He was disappointed to find it locked, though. Naruto didn't find out about a hidden back entrance that descended into the mountain until he was being pursued by Anbu. In any case, this was the greatest place Naruto could imagine residing in without a real house. Because it was so large, he was able to fit all of his belongings there with plenty of extra room. He had filled it to the brim with everything he had stolen and more. He even had a dedicated space where he could use a stolen scroll to practice taijutsu. Indeed, there was ventilation here, enabling him to start fires and have the smoke flow out of openings, letting in light throughout the space. Naruto sighed once more, appreciating his discovery of this secret location. It also had an intriguing peculiarity in that Naruto would never have imagined that the cave had multiple exits. Some tunnels led to the bottom of the mountain, others led to the sewers beneath Konoha, and still others led to the woods outside the city. When the deer was at last ready, he went over to it and started getting ready to eat. Perched atop the Hokage monument, Naruto gazed down at the whole village. He observed the kids being escorted home by their guardians and the crowds of people in late evening restraints. All were under his vigilant observation. Anyone and everyone, maybe except for Hinata. He'd never find the one person he was looking for, no matter how many times he used his keen eyes to scan the people below. Every night, he wondered about her whereabouts, her activities, and whether or not she even remembered him. In all honesty, and since he was perceptive enough to see this, she had lost sight of him in the opulent lifestyle of whichever wealthy clan had adopted her. That incensed him to think of it. He detested the state of the world, which was rife with killing, hatred, and irrational judgment. There was little reason for him to smile these days, and the only times he ever did were when he was thinking of Hinata or had accomplished something extraordinary. She was everything. The one priceless person who kept him grounded in reality. Deep down, beneath the surface, in his heart, he sensed an evil that was growing and driving him to implement justice. He swore that he heard a voice inside his head on multiple occasions, telling him to check this rock, where he discovered the monument entrance, or turn right when fleeing. Other times, the voice, or rather, a strong thought that he knew wasn't his, would push him to kill. But he hoped that he would never kill, unless it was to save Hinata's or his own life. He was certain that he would kill to keep anyone safe who held a special place in his heart. All he could hope was to meet her someday. He was aware that, barring a ninja transformation, he probably wouldn't see her again. When they were younger, he and Hinata had the same dream. To become ninjas in order to escape the orphanage. He was certain that she still desired to be a ninja, which required her to enlist in the academy, the main training ground for aspiring ninjas. And he would get to meet her if he joined too. But he needed to get stronger before he could join. If not strong, would they even let him in? Since he was unsure, he had been training from any scroll he could get his hands on with all of his spare time. Whatever it took to become strong, he would do it to join his friend as a ninja. The primary requirement for becoming a ninja was chakra. The ninja's strength increases with chakra strength. Naruto found the concept of chakra to be vaguely confusing, and his confusion only increased upon reading about it in scrolls. Chakras are said to represent two types of energy found within the body, spiritual and physical. He didn't know what Kekkei Genkei, or a bloodline limit, actually meant. Power came from chakras, and some people had unique chakras from birth. Furthermore, due to the division of chakra, individuals would either possess a unique boost in their spiritual chakra, which would form a dujutsu, an eye technique, or something else, or they would possess a boost in their physical chakra, which would give them access to various cool jutsu and other abilities. Ever since he started reflecting on himself in depth, Naruto had questioned whether he possessed anything similar. For starters, he recovered more quickly than most others. Hinata scraped her knee in a fall long ago, and while it took him minutes to heal, it took her days. The same thing happened to children who fell on the playground, and their bodies wouldn't heal for days. Furthermore, he could vouch for the fact that his eyes were, well, unique. He always had a better eye than others and would always catch things that nobody else would. He didn't even know if this was a Kekkei Genkei, and the scroll he studied indicated that it depended on the last name of the individual. When Naruto had looked up Uzumaki, the surname did not have any Kekkei Genkei listed. Naruto did, however, recall Hinata's last name, Senju. When he looked up that name, he was shocked to learn that it was supposedly one of the greatest and most powerful clans ever. Together with another clan, they even founded Konoha. They possessed the strongest physical chakra of all the clans, according to the legend that they possessed the ultimate Kekkei Genkei. Naruto discovered that Hinata's clan had dispersed or been killed in some way, which explained why she would ever be in an orphanage given how wonderful they were. It makes sense why Hinata was so significant. The other clan that founded Konoha, the Uchiha, had the strongest Dujutsu due to their possession of the greatest spiritual chakra. It was called the Sharingan, and it gave them the clearest vision possible. They could see chakra, follow the movements of others, and quickly mimic jutsu moves. It was amazing. If he had eyes like that instead of those, he wondered how much better his vision would be. For now, though, he had to make sure he had something to eat for breakfast the following day. Choosing which store to steal from, he started walking down the mountain stairs after deciding that it would be preferable to steal the food now rather than in the morning. Hyuga Manor, watching the sunset and the moon rise over her, Hinata and Kitsune sat on the roof of her manor. For the most part, her birthday had been boring, just as she had expected. The dinner was pleasant enough, but she didn't find it particularly enjoyable because the main members talked more about politics and her future than anything else. Neji had bid her good night and taken her to her room following the party, which had not even included gifts. She was certain Naruto would love it when she fearlessly crawled out her window and climbed to the roof as soon as she realized no one was nearby. Like him, she had always had an infatuation with breathtaking scenery. With a bored sigh, she looked up at the moon and the stars that were now twinkling in the sky. She sorely missed the company of her closest friend and the adventure that Naruto had given her. All she wanted was for them to cross paths again soon and for him to be accepted into the academy so that they could train to become ninjas together. Time would tell. Naruto's domain. In the morning, with the rising of the sun, Naruto got ready quickly for the day and ate his early breakfast. For him, every morning was an adventure, either exploring Konoha and discovering something new, or stealing something intriguing, going on an exciting chase, and discovering something interesting. His favorite topic to study was chakra since it described the potential power of a ninja. He didn't need to be physically stronger than his opponent to use chakra, which made fighting, especially against more experienced opponents, exciting. He hadn't mastered a chakra flow to seal objects with his hands, so he didn't really know any jutsu at the moment, but he did know enough to set off explosive tags and set up other kinds of traps using chakra. He occasionally questioned whether he would prefer to have daily adventures of his own or take Hinata's place and be adopted into a large and opulent clan. It was the action that he thought was preferable. He proceeded towards one of the tunnel entrances within the monument and made his way along the slender, circular path. En route, he picked up several weapons, including exploding tags, ninja wires, and shuriken, all of which he carried in a pouch. Every week, he went to the gun store to replenish his ammunition for all of his needs. He had taken to exploring the numerous secret tunnels that led to his hideout, which appeared in random locations throughout Konoha, to see where they would lead. He had carved the location of each tunnel with a kunai into the wall above it so that he would be confused. The kanji underground was above the tunnel he had entered because it led to Konoha's subterranean water pipes. Naruto spent several minutes making his way through the tunnel until he came to a circular hole at the end, where a ladder descended to the expansive Konoha underground water system, which resembled a sewer. Water was flowing regularly down a wide path, and it would split off into numerous other directions that led to every home and structure in Konoha. Konoha was constructed on a level surface, so there was a sizable subterranean water system that could have various pipes and other fittings going up to the buildings, each of which had a water filtration system. The actual sewers were located farther below the water sewers where Naruto was currently standing on a different level. Due to the strong stench, Naruto preferred not to go through the sewers unless absolutely necessary. Naruto whistled cheerfully as he made his way down the subterranean sidewalk and stopped at a ladder, double-checking that it was the correct one. He laughed when he realized that Naruto used to bathe every other day in these water caverns to clean himself. He pondered the reaction of the villagers should they discover that they were taking a bath in the same water he had taken earlier or that they had drunk it. Well, they wouldn't really know. In any case, the water was subjected to various purification and cleansing processes because storm drains also overflowed into this area. It took Naruto about 20 seconds to climb the ladder, and when he did, he carefully lifted the sewer lid just far enough to check if the alleyway was empty. He pushed it all the way to the side and climbed up out of the hole, nodding to himself. After cleaning himself up, he replaced the cover. He had found himself back in the same alleyway where he had first hidden himself. This was very handy because it was his old hideout, and he could run past the blanket and into the hidden building if he ever needed to escape someone. Unconcerned about being noticed, he strolled out into the street and down the alleyway. After all, he could now confidently defend himself with his self-taught skills, and even if the citizens did beat him up, the chunin and store owners couldn't punish him unless they caught him doing something wrong. He walked down to another alleyway, brushing his hands together as he made his way through the throng. Konoha reminded him of his own private playground. He had set up numerous hideouts and traps throughout the place over the course of a year, and he had provided weapons to every hideout. He wasn't kidding when he claimed to know the area like the back of his hand. He had no idea why he could think of such interesting ideas or recall every location with such clarity. Perhaps it had to do with his supposedly excellent vision. As he got ready to rig this particular alley, he took out his kunai, explosive tags, ninja wire, and all of his other tools. He would eventually have every area of Konoha set up as a trap, allowing him to flee to any location. Re-rigging alleys he'd recently used to dodge ninja also took time. He needed to have a flawless escape because he knew there was a good chance Jonin would follow after him. He intended to steal from the library and a weapons store, which the chunin detested, again today. Afterwards, in another place even at the young age of 12, Shisui Uchiha was one of the most talented Uchiha in the clan. 2 years ago, at the age of 10, he had become a chunin, having graduated from the academy at the age of 6. And now he was a part of both the Uchiha military police and the Konoha Black operations. At the tender age of 12, all of this. If there was no other boy in the clan who was even remotely as talented as him, he would be considered the greatest genius of them all. Ironically, his best friend Itachi Uchiha was equally talented and they had achieved the same feats together. He for his general brilliance, speed, and taijutsu skills, and Itachi for his general brilliance and genjutsu skills. They passed the same exam and became chunins at the same age after graduating from the academy. In fact, they had even drawn their decisive match at the chunin finals. The clan held great expectations for them, and perhaps with each other, the ties between Konoha and the Uchiha would grow even closer. Only a few weeks had passed since their admittance into the Anbu, and Shisui had been given his first real mission, one that would primarily require his speed and stealth to complete. It turns out that the person he was spying on was just a child, despite his initial belief that it was a legitimate mission. Konoha's Jinchuriki, Naruto Uzumaki. Why would someone need to spy on him? Shisui didn't need to be told why, as he had a pretty good idea already. Ever since the fateful night the Yondaime had offered himself as a sacrifice, everyone in the village who was old enough knew that Naruto had the Kyuubi sealed inside of him. But the Uchiha clan had the best eyes, and they knew something that the others did not. People noticed on the night of the attack that a man was perched atop the Kyuubi and that, for a brief while, he had even engaged the Yondaime in balanced combat. Who among the Yondaime, said to be the strongest in the world, could defeat the nine-tailed beast and engage in equal opportunity combat? The Uchiha clan made a very good estimate. The first Hokage and Madara Uchiha, who was thought to be dead, were among the very few individuals on a very small list who were the only known users of the Kyuubi. Hashirama used his Senju Kekkei Genkei, the strongest physical chakra, to control the Biju. By combining chakras, he was able to create advanced elements like wood. Conversely, Madara utilized his Dujutsu and the Uchiha Kekkei Genkei, the most powerful spiritual chakra, to subdue the beast. This still left open the question of who was in control of the Kyuubi that evening. Nobody could identify the man from a distance until you consider the black flames that started to spread throughout Konoha and didn't go out until the man and the Kyuubi disappeared. That might have been any special jutsu to another ninja, but to the Uchiha, it meant much, much more. It was Amaterasu, one of the Mangekyo Sharingan's skills. Since this power could only be used by Uchiha, Fugaku, the head of the clan, combined their ideas and came to the conclusion that Madara was once again the one leading the attack against Konoha. The mystery was solved at that point, or was it? After telling the clan about this, Fugaku explained how the Kyuubi had perished and how it had been sealed inside Naruto. What then had become of Madara? The only thing that could have happened was for Madara to also be sealed inside Naruto. The clan was shocked to learn that this was a secret S-class. There was a ninja in the village who was young enough to be shaped into whatever form any clan desired for him, and he possessed both the strongest Biju in the world and Madara Uchiha. He was essential to the Uchiha. Nevertheless, Fugaku was cautious and wanted confirmation of his suspicions. For this reason, he assigned Shisui the task of observing Naruto for a week in order to see if he saw anything unusual, even for a Jinchuriki. Upon further reflection, Shisui surmised that this mission held great significance as it would ultimately determine the fate of the Uchiha clan. Who knows? Maybe this kid would become as strong as Madara and take the Uchiha one step further again. Fugaku had initially given the Hyuga permission to rule Hinata for that reason. The only other prominent clan with enough clout to debate equally over who gets to adopt a significant child was the Hyuga clan. Therefore, the Uchiha would be able to adopt him without hesitation if Fugaku's beliefs are correct and Naruto truly did hold Madara. Every time a child is adopted into a significant clan, the council is consulted and must give their approval. If, at that meeting, the Hyuga had learned the truth and decided they wanted Naruto too, and the Uchiha had been granted control over Hinata, then they would have received Naruto. A child with the Kyuubi and Madara was far more important than a Senju, even though the Uchiha would love to have one. It was unjust that one clan could adopt two strong children in a succession. The Uchiha would get possession of Naruto now that the Hyuga had Hinata. Furthermore, no other clan had the power to persuade the council to grant them access to Naruto. Complete victory. However, even for Shisui the teleporter, spying on this kid wasn't going to be an easy task. Even though it had taken him a while to locate the boy, he did so in the end, but only because someone had called out. Demon Thief. When Shisui had first arrived on the scene, his blonde target had been hiding several scrolls in his side ninja pouch while he was running out of Konoha's library. 3 Chunin-level ninja appeared right behind him, threatening and cursing Naruto as they ran out of the library. He grinned to himself, having at last located the child. Furthermore, it seems that he did indeed steal and cause as much trouble as his reputation suggested. His work would be far more enjoyable in that way. Shisui, after all, shared almost the same sense of humor as his best friend Itachi, despite not exactly being viewed as the black sheep by the clan, unlike his friend Obito. Indeed, many questioned how the two could ever become friends, much less best friends. He continued to smile as he leapt from roof to roof, watching as Naruto maneuvered through the crowd, the Chunin following closely behind, his Sharingan tracking every step. This kid moved so quickly, especially since he wasn't accelerating his speed with chakra. He also had the advantage of being able to run through crowds more quickly and remaining invisible. After a while, Naruto dashed down an alley, and the Chunin soon followed. Poof! Shisui momentarily lost sight of Naruto as the entire alleyway suddenly erupted in a massive cloud of smoke from multiple smoke bombs, enough to leave everyone on the nearby street in disbelief. Shisui teleported, moved at a high speed, to the building without waiting for the smoke to clear, arriving just in time to witness Naruto use a ladder to climb to the top of the roof. Shisui was impressed when, surprisingly, the blonde boy was able to jump across several rooftops with just enough room to spare without using chakra. It was easy for him to assume that the boy had been practicing this route before. He thought to himself, ninja art, camouflage technique, and vanished from view so that neither he nor the other Chunin guards would be noticed by Naruto. When the Chunin finally managed to run up the side of the buildings and reach Naruto, it was too late. Naruto had already fallen into another alleyway and was no longer visible to anyone save Shisui, who noticed that he had once again become lost in the crowd. Shisui, obviously amused by what he saw, had to swallow his amusement to keep from laughing aloud as he abandoned his technique and followed Naruto in silence. This boy had skill. He was only 5 years old. Without a doubt, he would have graduated from the academy a year ahead of him and Itachi if he had grown up in a prominent clan like the Uchiha. Shisui had even more respect for him because he had even left his pilfered goods in an abandoned building in the middle of everything. This was a lot of fun. His legendary eyes followed Naruto through the crowd for several minutes before noticing that the character had entered a clothes store. He waited on the rooftop across from him, grin wide, to see what would happen. With haste, Naruto walked into the clothing store and made his way to the children's department, where he could find clothing in his size. Each of the necessary 2 pairs of clothes he already owned, but he wanted more. He needed them because it would be more difficult for store owners to identify him so quickly if he changed clothes more frequently. Though he loved the color, his original bright orange shirt made him stand out like a demon in a crowd. Well, that was a poor metaphor for him. Regardless, he required a new shirt, a bigger ninja pouch, and it would probably not hurt to purchase a beanie hat in order to conceal his identity. If only he could manage to steal everything without being discovered. He removed his beanie hat and tossed it over his head to conceal his bare blonde hair. As he was finishing up, a store assistant passed by him without a word. Perfect. He made his way swiftly to the shirt department, stopping to pick up a big ninja pouch along the way. When he did, he suddenly froze and looked up into the face of a Jonin ninja with a long toothpick protruding from his mouth. They exchanged blank looks for a moment before Naruto dove between his legs, grabbed a shirt off the shelf, and bolted from the store as fast as he could. Genma yelled, "Hey, it's you again," as she chased after Naruto. He had previously encountered Naruto, and their relationship was not amicable. "Get him!" Shisui snapped to attention when Naruto dashed out the side door of the store, followed quickly by, "Was that Genma?" Well, along with a few more chunin. This child really knew how to put on a show. Naruto dashed through the throng, but Genma and Shisui, who was laughing non-stop from the tops of the roofs, were able to keep up with him. He observed with delight, "Oh boy, don't go into the alley," as the scene unfolded. You know what happens when you follow him into an alley. Make a swish. There were several sounds of kunai and shuriken flying around, some even emerging into the street, which made Shisui laugh aloud. He laughed once more when he peered into the alley and saw one Chunin ninja unexpectedly bound in ninja wire. He watched gleefully as Naruto ran into the side of another abandoned building, about 5 stories tall, after donning his new gear to enable him to run faster. After 3 or so minutes of patient waiting, he finally saw Naruto emerge from the top of the building and sprint towards the edge. A short while later, only Genma emerged from the top. He hurried to catch up with Naruto, but it was too late. Naruto had already zipped down a pre-arranged zip line and was racing through the throng of people on the street level. Genma used his chakra to leap down and pursue Naruto once more, gaining ground quickly. To Shisui's surprise, Naruto ran into a dead-end alley. Rather than stepping through a series of traps, he dove inside a dumpster and closed the lid just in time to keep Genma from seeing him. Shisui remarked, "Oh, don't check the dumpster," as he observed Genma enter the alleyways and search the walls for possible routes for Naruto to take in this dead end. Shisui felt compelled to watch Naruto break free and deceive the more seasoned ninja because it felt like she was watching a movie. Eventually, much to his dismay, Genma approached the dumpster and threw it open, peering inside to see if anyone was inside. Shisui sighed. At least so far, watching Naruto had been enjoyable. To Shisui's utter surprise, though, after searching through the dumpster for 30 seconds, Genma threw it shut, shaking his head in disappointment and mouthing several swear words that Shisui could read with his Sharingan. The small creature was free. However, how? Witnessing the scene from above, Shisui was astounded to see Naruto emerge from a dumpster on the opposite side of the building and to see movement coming from the parallel alley. He had punched a hole in the first dumpster, crawled through the abandoned structure, and exited via another dumpster on the opposite side of the big structure. This child was exceptionally intelligent. He laughed harder as he saw Naruto blend back into the crowd before crossing the street and going into the adjacent gun store. Apparently, this child had that whole thing planned out the entire time. He was aware that he wouldn't lose Genma until the dumpster next to the gun store. When he had free time, he would need to convince Itachi to watch Naruto with him. This was simply too excellent. Relieved that his plan had succeeded and he had managed to get away from Genma in time, Naruto entered the weapons store. If not, he would have had to escape him by going through the enormous network of subterranean water pipes, which would have taken him further away from the weapons store. In any case, he was able to move around the store without anyone recognizing him thanks to his new outfit and hat. Taking a look around, he snatched up a big empty box and started packing it full of extra tools, including ninja wire, smoke bombs, shuriken, kunai, and exploding tags. He turned around in surprise when he realized that one of the workers was standing behind him when he had filled it all the way up. "Hiya!" she exclaimed, astonished by everything in the box. "That's a lot of stuff you got there. You must have a lot of money? Are you ready to buy? I can ring up everything for you. My daddy owns this shop and he's teaching me how to run the place." Naruto gave the girl a disdainful, upturned glance. Her hair was pulled back in two buns on top of her head, and she appeared to be about his age. He had assumed he was lost, but fortunately this rookie girl had discovered him. Lying, Naruto pretended to be the child that his age called him. My mom's outside with the money. I'll go run there and tell her it's time to come in and pay. Be right back." With a joyful smile, the girl gave him a nod. "Great, I'll be waiting at the cash register when you come back." Naruto, taken aback by the success of his hasty scheme, nodded slowly. Hey, this girl's gullibility wasn't his problem. That being said, he turned and left the waiting girl behind, walking out the door. She would have to wait for a long time because, of course, he wouldn't return anytime soon. After deceiving the one girl he was speaking to, Naruto left the store, and Shisui shook his head in disbelief. This kid was amazing. He had just made his getaway with a big box full of stolen goods. Watching Naruto was going to be an incredible experience this week. He would definitely need to bring Itachi along to spy on them. Naruto was taken aback when he unexpectedly ran into someone on the street, dropping his box and sending several items tumbling to the ground. Naruto gathered everything in a hurry and replaced it as soon as he could. Shisui's eyes grew wide upon realizing who precisely Naruto had encountered. Kakashi Hitaki, 19, scowled beneath his mask as he looked down from his book and saw the young child in front of him gathering up a number of objects that had recently fallen from the floor. When he saw who it was, his one eye widened for a moment before settling back into its usual lazy glaze. "It's funny to run into him here," he said. "That's a lot of stuff you have there," while Naruto repacked everything into the box. While he was still packing the box, Naruto briefly put on a fake smile like any other kid. He played his part perfectly, lying, saying, "Yeah, there was a sale today and my mommy bought all of this for me so I can grow up to be a big strong ninja like daddy someday." Adults always took him for granted, man. With a contemplative nod, Kakashi turned back to his book. Having graduated from the academy at the age of 5 and turned into a chunin at 6, he was determined not to be affected by Naruto's seemingly innocent act. He could never have underestimated a child. "Yes, that would make sense, if the store actually did have a sale today and you actually did have parents," he said, grinning broadly at the surprised Naruto, who had just completed packing everything. Sadly, eye smiling wasn't as simple for the one-eyed Kakashi as it appeared. Closing his one eye rendered him momentarily blind. So he was blind to Naruto's approach when he ran up to him, cocked back his foot, and nailed him in his private area. Shisui burst out laughing as Naruto dashed past him with his stolen goods box in hand, sending the famous copy ninja of Konoha to the ground in shock and blinding pain. Naruto was laughing so much that Shisui could hardly believe he had jumped into one of the alley water sewer systems before vanishing from view. When he returned, oh boy, did he have a story to tell Itachi. He was going to spend the rest of the week snooping on Naruto and having a great time. A few days later, morning at Hyuga Manor with a sigh, Hinata rose from her bed and walked to her window, gazing out. Hiyashi-sama had decided to give her the day off on Saturday. He had been training her much harder since she turned 5. Her theory was strongly supported by the fact that she woke up a little sore. She would still try her hardest to appreciate what he had so kindly given her. But she didn't know what she was meant to do. She was under strict orders from Hiyashi-sama not to leave the Hyuga compounds, just as she had the weekend before. All she did at that point was read scrolls in the Hyuga library or just lounge around in her room. This place was devoid of enjoyable activities. Even Neji devoted his spare time to training. Hanabi, Hiyashi's firstborn daughter, was the only other person who was even close to her age, and she was only 2 years old. Even though Hinata thought she was cute and enjoyed spending time with her, there was only so much fun she could have walking behind her father. Since climbing to the roof was probably the most enjoyable thing she could do in this compound, she might as well do so. Not wanting to drop him or anything outside, she left Kitsune on the bed. After gaining access to the manor's roof and climbing out her window, she found a comfortable spot to sit and took in the morning view of Konoha. She hugged her knees to her chest and gazed at the numerous people she saw throughout the village. Fortunately, her manor was situated at the edge of the compound, allowing her to see the village and keeping any Hyuga from seeing her. At least not without the Byakugan. Her first thought was, what is Naruto doing at the orphanage? She hoped he was okay, but considering how the adults had handled him in the past and the fact that he was alone without her to protect him from harm, she wasn't sure. Most likely, his life was a living hell. They most likely mistreated him frequently, fed him terrible food, and made fun of him in front of the children. If only she could ensure he was okay, or find a way to assist him. Her eyes suddenly widened, and she straightened. It was possible, she could assist him, she could climb up the dumpster as before, then climb on the house, cross the tree branch over the wall, and meet Naruto on the roof if she could find a way out of the compound and sneak over to the orphanage. That was excellent. Excitedly, she pushed her fingers together as she paced the roof. It would allow her to see Naruto once more. Well, but how would she leave the property? Well, what might Naruto do? His gaze strayed to the edge of the roof, where she noticed a second tree growing adjacent, and over the wall of the compound, resembling the orphanage. She tried to control her excitement while smiling and inhaled deeply. This was going to be successful. She approached the tree that stood right next to the manor and, without pausing, leapt up to it, just missing the branch. She got herself up and proceeded to crawl forward until she crossed the compound wall. But as she looked ahead, she saw that there was nothing to cushion her fall and that the drop to the ground was rather steep. How would she respond to this? Fear took hold of her and she began to breathe heavily. She gripped the tree branch tightly in the hopes that she wouldn't fall. The sound of cracking startled her, widening her eyes. Turning around, she saw that the branch she was clinging to was breaking under her weight. Oh no. Snap. The branch broke off before she could react, sending her falling to the ground and making a surprised squeak. She attempted to land on her feet using her practiced reflexes, but she struck the ground hard and twirled around in the sore dirt. She groaned, trying not to draw attention to herself or anyone else. She waited for the pain to subside for a minute before getting up and putting herself together. Upon realizing that she had successfully exited the compound, she let out a nervous giggle and pressed her fingers together. Taking deep breaths to try to calm herself, she tried to leave the compound as soon as she realized she was free. She jogged down the street. Somewhere else with a yawn, Naruto emerged from an alleyway sewer and entered the sunlight, carrying a big box of supplies with him. The only things keeping it bright down there were a few lanterns and the natural sunlight that filtered through a few holes on top. Man, they really needed to add more lights down there. He shook himself to get more awake, and then he struggled his way up a ladder by the alley's side to the top. He had to retrace his escape routes, correct all of his mistakes, and confirm that his traps were set ablaze. After all, one slip-up could result in him being beaten to death by a group of enraged ninja. With a sigh, he examined the existing roof and used a ninja wire and multiple smoke bombs to make a tripwire that would set off the smoke bombs in the event that someone ran by. After a few minutes, he leapt over to the next roof in the vicinity and carried out the same procedure, making sure all the roots were still intact as he went from roof to roof. Orphanage. 1 hour later, after all these months, Hinata had finally found the right alley to take her to the orphanage walls. The exact same ones that she and Naruto had scaled. She shivered, a wave of nostalgia washing over her since it seemed like ages since she'd last seen the place. She did notice, though, that the dumpster they had used to scale the side of the house was gone this time. What location was it? In what other way could she ascend to the roof? After taking a tour of the structure, she realized that she would need the dumpster in order to reach the roof. She crossed her arms in frustration and sighed angrily. Her plans had all come to naught. In what other way could she? Her gaze landed on the dumpster she needed, and she stopped. It was moved, and now it was on the opposite side of the neighboring house from where it had been in the same alley. The house next to her would be hers to stay in instead of the one she was previously able to get on. Without wasting any time, she ran over to the dumpster and leapt to the top, pulling herself over. She frowned as she looked up from there. She would have to ascend a little on her own because this house was taller than the previous one. She leapt as high as she could, determined, and managed to grab onto a window ledge below the roof. She continued to pull herself higher from that point on until she was able to leap up and seize hold of the edge of the roof. Breathing hard, she made one last effort, swinging her legs up to pull herself over and onto the roof. She got up and went to the edge of the roof. She wouldn't need to use the tree to climb all the way over because this house was taller than the other and she was level with the orphanage wall. However, this was going to be difficult. It was necessary for her to leap from the roof to the wall, and then to the orphanage's roof. Could she even pull it off? She would, indeed, for Naruto. She still needed to maintain her balance even though the wall wasn't that far away. She focused, inhaled deeply, and ran to the edge of the roof, using all of her concentration to jump over the opening and onto the wall of the orphanage. She leapt a little too short, though, and ended up landing on the edge of the wall rather than on a clear landing. She swung her arms in an attempt to propel herself forward but failed, falling backward. She closed her eyes for that brief moment, wondering if this was it for her, if she was truly going to die. Give a clap. She felt herself staying in the air for a few moments after she fell off the wall. She opened her eyes and saw that someone was keeping her in the air by holding onto her arm. However, as she looked up the arm, her brown eyes met the bluest eyes she had ever seen, along with the broadest smile. Naruto. There were a lot of things that Naruto was watching out for when he was jumping from roof to roof. Like ninja who might try to follow him or sneak up on him to attack, or other strange objects. When he landed in front of a building to check it out, he was taken aback to see that the store owner had fled, taking him by surprise and giving him a hard kick to the face. He healed rather quickly, even though it had hurt and bled a little. But it was a natural instinct for him to check when he later saw someone small on the distant roofs. But as he narrowed his eyes and approached the individual, hopping from roof to roof, his eyes grew wide with disbelief upon finally identifying who it was. Aku. His best friend was, for some reason, perched on a house roof in front of the former orphanage. He ran across the rooftops to her, excited and shocked, waiting to yell her name. However, just as he was about to jump to her roof, she leapt off the ledge and onto the orphanage wall. How could she have known? Naruto's eyes sensed right away that she wouldn't be able to make the jump, somehow, for some reason. He may have recognized her ability to jump from heights due to months of experience, and based on the way she leapt, he concluded she was out. Quick thinking had caused him to dash to the roof's edge in time to witness her swaying on the edge of the wall and potentially falling off. He was able to dive down and grab her hand when she did fall backwards, falling off the ledge himself but holding onto it with his free hand. He pulled Hinata and himself up to the roof, cleaned himself up, and exhaled with relief that she was all right. His expression was one of concern as he turned to face her. Hinata-heim, what? He could not finish his sentence before she rushed to him, giving him a jaw-dropping hug and laughing so hard that he burst out of his clothes. When he saw his best friend again, he was able to smile incessantly and gave her a hug in return, laughing all the while. Naruto continued his previous question after they parted, still grinning at her. What are you doing up here? With a smile of her own, Hinata started to jump up and down with excitement as she pushed her fingers together. She exclaimed, keeping her voice low in case anyone heard, I escaped from my clan for the day. I came over here to see you. This surprised Naruto a little, and it took him a moment to come out of his daze. Was she really the last member of her clan to leave to visit him? We ought to head somewhere else, he uttered, glancing to both sides. Within a minute, squads of Anbu would probably be sent after him if anyone saw him on the roof with her. He pulled her over to the edge of the house and said, Here, follow me. We can talk somewhere else where it's safe. Hokage Memorial. They sat there, gazing at the magnificent village in front of them, after Naruto had brought Hinata to the summit of the Hokage monument. They simply didn't know where to begin because they had so much they wanted to share with one another. They had been staring at each other for some time, absorbing each other's presence and nearly consuming the image to saturate their memories. It was delightful to actually see each other after only having seen each other in memory. Naruto's hair had grown a little longer and untidy, covering his forehead and tumbling down the side of his head, as Hinata noticed. Hinata's hair had grown longer as well, and Naruto saw that it fell straight down to her back. At last, Hinata turned to face him and asked, How is the orphanage? With concern. This made Naruto laugh and snort for some reason. which alarmed Hinata. Had she made a mistake in her question? "Ha!" he exclaimed as he peered up at the sky. "I don't know, I haven't been there in like 6 months." Hinata gasped and her eyes widened at this. "What, how? Did you run away?" Naruto shook his head and relived the moment by going back into his memories. He continued, slowing down toward the end as Hinata's expression darkened dramatically. "No, they kicked me out. The day you left, and I tried to talk with you. I think I bit the leader of the orphanage, and after you left, he threw me into my room, told me to pack everything up, and then, well, he sorta kicked me out of the place and onto the streets." She jumped to her feet and screamed, "What?" making him flinch in shock. "How could they do that? That's terrible." Watching Hinata scream in front of him, Naruto's eyes grew wide, surprised that she would be so angry. He tried to calm her down by saying, No, it's alright. Really." He felt, deep down, warm, knowing how much she cared for him. "I found my own place to live, She cried out to him once more, sounding almost like a furious mother. "How did you eat?" Scratching the back of his head, Naruto tried to think of the best way to tell her. He shrugged nonchalantly, trying to make it sound better than it was. "Well, for a while, I just ate out of the dumpsters. It wasn't too bad," he said. It's odd how much louder Hinata's silence was than her yelling. She stood motionless, clenching her fist and trembling like a volcano ready to erupt, and he cringed. "But, he went on, attempting to correct her before she lost her cool. "I stopped after a couple weeks. I learned how to hunt out in the woods and training grounds, and I started stealing good and healthy food." In an attempt to relax, Hinata inhaled deeply. She didn't want to ruin her reunion with Naruto by yelling at him because it was almost midday. As she was about to probe further into his life, she saw something on his face. "What's this?" she inquired, brushing the hair that was obscuring her view of his cheek with her hand. She gasped as she pushed his wild blonde bangs away and saw a sizable bruise on his cheek. She whispered, Where did you get this? Did the ninja or the villagers beat him up?" Should they do so, she would never permit such an event to occur. Her best friend would never be subjected to such treatment again, so she would permanently flee from the Hyuga. Silently, Naruto cursed that she had discovered his bruise. He desired to relish his time spent with her. He wanted her to be concerned about more than just what he had to endure. He reflected back. Shall he tell her a falsehood, that he tripped? No, lying to his best friend would never be beneficial, would it? Perhaps just a small white lie to keep her from getting angry? "I tripped over myself when I was walking up some stairs, and then I hit my face." Keenly observing her, he hoped she would believe him. Though he assumed she might do something for him, he didn't want her to take any drastic actions. She did, after all, spend a day running away from the Hyuga to see him. Leaning against him, she sighed as she felt tears well up in her eyes. She tried to wipe away her tears and giggle into his shirt as she exclaimed, Be careful, silly. It hurts so much to have to cry in front of him. Please. I just don't want you to get hurt," she said, raising her gaze to meet his. Naruto confidently smiled at her. "You don't have to worry about me. I've gotten stronger. I've trained myself, and I work hard every day." She gave him a nod, sniffed, and straightened her chair once more. "Me too," she said, trying to project strength in his presence. "I've been training with my new family every day." It was now Naruto's turn to feel a little anxious. He held up her arm to look at it and said, "They aren't training you too hard, are they?" "Hey, wait a second, what's this?" When he looked closely, he could clearly see a small bruise mark on her arm. Hinata started to get concerned too. She also didn't want Naruto to be concerned about her. If he believed she was receiving unjust treatment, then... Withdrawing her arm, she exclaimed, "Oh, this? It's nothing," she slightly lied, saying, "And no, my training is going just fine." She was learning a lot, so everything was going well, but Hiashi's blows could be a bit too severe at times. With a sigh, Naruto dismissed it. He didn't want to talk about their bad luck with each other during their time together. While they had the opportunity, they had to enjoy themselves to the fullest. "Let me show you something," Naruto said as he got to his feet and assisted Hinata in getting to her feet. She trailed after him, curious, out of sight of the village and into some of the surrounding woods. She was perplexed, especially when he approached a big rock that had bushes all around it. She did, however, gasped when she noticed an opening leading down a candle tunnel as they passed through the bushes and he covered the rock. He turned to smile at her again and said, "Let me show you where I live," before making his way through the tunnel. Though Hinata was still concerned about Naruto, her initial concern had given way to a new one. Jealousy. In a big way. Though she was confined to a dull training compound every day, Naruto lived in an enormous cavern inside the monument. Every day he would travel through Konoha, hiding in tunnels beneath the city, robbing stores, and making escapes. The enormous cave behind the monument amazed her. It was enormous, lit by the many candles on the wall and the sporadic streams of light that occasionally seeped in through holes in the wall. His own mattress was tossed into the corner of the space, and there were little hills and mountains of scrolls all over the cave. There were several dummies and logs with kunai embedded in them, so she could assume that the center of everything was some kind of training area. The high ceiling and walls displayed a variety of shuriken targets, along with a cozy-looking reading chair, a fire pit to one side, and what appeared to be a massive, real map of Konoha that was illuminated and readable by candles on one wall. Rather than being a house, it was more like Naruto's domain. He then guided her by hand through another tunnel that was even darker and descended deeper into the mountain. At the end of the tunnel was a ladder that descended into Konoha's water system, another enormous area. There were lengthy water tunnels with walkways for walking along the sides. Every water intersection also had ladders leading up to it. Naruto could pass beneath it and travel all over Konoha. It was enormous. It resembled a tiny, pedestrian-only subterranean city. She asked, adjusting her hat, "How do you remember where each waterway leads to, and where the ladders head up to?" In an attempt to partially camouflage her, Naruto had given her one of his beanie hats, which covered the top of her head. Her hair continued to cascade down her back, giving her a somewhat rugged appearance that prevented anyone from mistaking her for Hinata Senju. "I used to have a map," Naruto remarked as he started to ascend a ladder, her trailing closely behind. "But after you go through these a couple of dozen times, you memorize it, ya know? I go through every day after all. It also helps if you visualize what's in Konoha above you, and because I know most of Konoha like the back of my hand, it's easy to keep track. Right now we're going to head up into an alleyway right across from a dango restaurant." Astonished, Hinata nodded and followed him up the ladder. She really didn't care that her elegant clothes were getting a little messy. She was having a great time. After pushing aside the sewer head at the top of the ladder, Naruto and Hinata ascended into the alley and into Konoha. Somewhere else. There he is. In a matter of seconds, Shisui leapt from building to building, landing on one and perching on its edge. "He's right down there, coming out of the sewer." The 12-year-old Itachi asked, landing next to his best friend and peering down, "Is this really going to be worth my break?" His penetrating vision caught sight of a small boy wearing a black shirt and tan shorts emerging from the sewer, but only momentarily did his pupils widen as a small girl emerged from behind him. He asked Shisui, who appeared equally shocked, "Didn't you say that he traveled alone?" Shisui shrugged and cast a curious glance down. "Yeah, as far as I know, he's never partnered up with anybody, he's always been alone." It took a few moments, but they both knew immediately who it was when the young girl raised her head to look around in wonder. Senju Hinata. How on earth was she interacting with Naruto? Itachi commented to Shisui, whose mouth was hanging open, "That's interesting." Following their lunch at a packed fast food restaurant, where they had mostly hidden their faces, the dynamic pair head toward Konoha, Naruto showing her everything he would do in a day. He showed her Naruto's other hideouts, cool rooftops, abandoned buildings, rivers, bridges, and a lot more. He had even taken a candy bar from the store and fled with her while they laughed the entire way away from the store owner. Nevertheless, since the two had been together all day, it was growing late in the evening. Holding onto Naruto's hand as he guided her through the city streets, Hinata let out a sigh. Their final destination of the day was going to be a cool training ground with a waterfall that he was taking her to see. She had informed him, "I have to be home by 7 o'clock for dinner," when their last quest was complete. She had spent the entire day with him, and it had probably been the best day of her life to date. Acknowledging the time constraint, he informed her that he still had a waterfall at a training ground he would like to show her. They eventually emerged into an open field after walking through the central city for about 15 minutes. "We're almost there," Naruto remarked, dragging her swiftly after him. She nodded, on the verge of not wanting it to be real. She desired to be with him all the time, without end. She wished it would never end. Pulling on his hand as they ran through the fields together, she asked, "Do you think that we'll be able to do this next week?" She felt a surge of warmth as Naruto turned to face her and grinned mischievously. "Of course. We can meet on the Hokage's monument every Saturday in the morning." She grinned, happy that they would be able to spend time together every week. Her stay at the Hyuga compound would be greatly improved if she could do it without being discovered. They had barely crossed the hill's summit when Naruto abruptly stopped. "There it is!" he exclaimed, gesturing toward the side of a mountain where a stunning waterfall was cascading water over it and glittering in the dusk. "It's beautiful." Hiding from a distance, Itachi asked Shisui in a bored manner, "So this is all you wanted to show me?" With a sigh of resignation, Shisui shrugged his shoulders. "I'm telling you, you just came on a bad day. Usually he does all these super funny things and tricks all these ninja. I think this has something to do with that girl that came with him, the Senju. I've never seen her before. Do you think they were friends before?" Itachi shrugged, got to his feet, and turned to go. "Not sure. Maybe they." When Itachi abruptly stopped speaking in the middle of a sentence, Shisui turned to face him and was taken aback to see that Itachi had activated his Sharingan and was looking off into the distance with a serious expression on his face. Shisui inquired quietly, "What is it?" being quite alarmed by Itachi's expression. There was a pause before Itachi whispered back. He pointed to where he was looking and said, "I can see someone, no, several ninja, hiding in the trees over there." With a nod, Shisui quickly turned on his own Sharingan and turned to face the direction Itachi had indicated. As his friend had predicted, he was able to make out the potent chakra signatures of multiple ninja who were concealed in the trees. They had to be ninjas at least at the Jonin level, given the power of their chakra. "They are not from this area," Shisui said, growing concerned. "I've never seen them before." Itachi nodded too, albeit much more subduedly. "They must be here to capture Hinata, or Naruto." Shisui got to his feet and took out his kunai. "Then let's go over there and get them before they can." Shisui stopped, shocked, and Itachi pulled him back down hard, gesturing for him to stop talking. With evident frustration, Shisui asked him in a whisper, "What are you doing? We have to save them." Itachi shook his head, his gaze never shifting from the ninja hiding there. "No, we must discover their motivation." Ignorant villains frequently reveal their schemes in monologues prior to attacking, and this one might be no different. We must discover if they are pursuing Hinata or Naruto, and more crucially, why they're here. We need to know what Naruto will do in defense. Shisui disregarded Itachi's plan and gave him a crazy look. "What do you mean, what will Naruto do in defense?" "If my understanding is right, you were sent on a mission to spy on Naruto not for fun but to find out if Madara lives inside of him." Itachi sighed, continuing to stare at the ninja. "This is our opportunity." Shisui's eyes grew wide at the thought. If circumstances demanded it, Naruto could call upon Madara's power, allowing them to peer into Naruto's chakra system and determine whether Madara was truly present. Just wait for now. Today had probably been the best day either of them had ever had. Everything had gone perfectly for them. Naruto and Hinata sat together in front of the waterfall, spending the last few minutes they had together enjoying the view and ambience of the waterfall. At last, Naruto got up, followed by Hinata. "It's probably time for you to go home now," Naruto sadly remarked, and Hinata let out a sigh of realization that he was probably right. "All right. Thank you." She looked up at him, raising an eyebrow in response. "Why?" he questioned, not understanding. She pushed her fingers together nervously and said, "Today was amazing. With you. Thanks for showing me everywhere, it was really wonderful. I am very excited to see you next week." Just as Naruto was about to tell her that he enjoyed it, he noticed something behind her. It was only a small movement, but it was enough for his eyes to register. A voice said, "Ah, how very touching," out of nowhere, making Hinata turn around. 3 ninja then leapt into the clearing and stared at them. Naruto recognized them right away because they were wearing a strange symbol on their forehead protectors that he had never seen before. "Who are you?" Hinata had clumsily grasped onto his clothing from behind, trying to hide herself, but Naruto saw this and yelled out to them, standing protectively in front of her and pushing her behind him. With a confident smile on his face, the lead ninja moved forward. I thought that someone as significant as a Senju would be constantly protected, particularly following the annihilation of the clan. The Raikage dispatched 3 of us to combat any guardians, but it appears that you have just one guardian, and he's a young boy, not even old enough to attend the academy. They had just stated that they had been sent by the Raikage, the leader of Cloud, to fight off anyone guarding Hinata. That meant that they either wanted her dead or they wanted to capture her. Naruto ground his teeth together and slowly pulled out a kunai. This was not good. For what purpose do you want Hinata? He thought of telling her to run off while he held them off, but he guessed that he wouldn't stand a chance and she wouldn't make it past 5 steps. These guys were sent on an important mission, and they would be strong enough to fight off anyone guarding Hinata, so he knew that they had to be Jonin or Anbu. He shouted back again, his mind spinning at what he could do. For some reason, the lead ninja laughed and said, "That's an obvious one. She's a Senju. We would be so much stronger if her blood had been integrated into our clans. We might also have our own Senju clan, led by Cloud." Cursing, Naruto had no idea what to do. If he had waited for them to attack, Hinata would have been trapped. If he had fled, Hinata would not have survived. His only chance was to surprise one of them, if only he had placed traps here. He wasted no time in drawing out several more kunai and flinging them as hard as he could at the group. Regretfully, they managed to bat them away without even flinching. "You are a fierce one, indeed," the ninja commented, happily. Suddenly, his face dropped to a completely serious one, his eyes narrowing. "Don't kid yourself. Remove them." He raised his hand in triumph and yelled. The 2 next to him shot forward in an instant, hurtling toward a terrified Naruto, whose vision was limited to a tunnel as they approached. This was it. Hinata and his lives were at stake, and he needed to be strong. He would have to use what he had wisely, so he quickly thought and threw several smoke bombs out in front of where they were running. Just as he had predicted, the ninja had leapt up out of the smoke and pursued them. Thinking ahead, Naruto pulled out several kunai with explosive tags wrapped around them and threw them at the attackers. Much like the last time, a massive explosion filled the air. Naruto grabbed Hinata's hand and dashed off to the side, sprinting as fast as their legs would carry them. There was no chance that they would be able to return to the village in a safe manner as they ran on. Naruto's gaze finally settled on the distant picture of the village. The main ninja suddenly materialized in front of him and punched Naruto back with a powerful kick to the chest, sending Hinata flying with him as a result of their mutual clinging. As he stood up, gasping for air, Naruto saw that the 3 ninja had surrounded them and were moving slowly in their approach, sure of their victory. With a quick motion, he reached into his ninja pouch, searching for what was left of him. He had set up traps throughout the village with all of his weapons, so what use would they be if he wasn't alive to use them? A few shuriken and 1 more explosive tag. He took a slow, deep breath and withdrew a kunai and an exploding tag, wrapping the tag around the short blade holder. The 3 approaching ninja halted as soon as they saw him remove the weapon, just in case. "Oh, you believe that this time, employing the same attack, will succeed? That's the difference between a ninja and a little brat like yourself. You don't use your brain." The head ninja teased, obviously amused at his strategies. "Try your hardest and move quickly so we can capture little Miss Senju. If you don't stop wasting my time, I'll kill you." Looking back and forth between the man, Hinata, and his exploding tag, Naruto felt his insides turn at the sick look of confidence he saw written on the man's face. He may not live, but whatever it took to ensure Hinata's survival. He took his explosive kunai and threw it as high into the air as he could before any of them could react, throwing as hard as his arm could manage. The 3 attackers watched in disbelief as the kunai shot upward, harmlessly away from anyone, and when it reached the pinnacle of its throw, it exploded, producing a loud, visible blast and flare. The main ninja's eyes hardened as he glared at the smirking Naruto with annoyance, while the other ninja laughed at Naruto. Over the other ninja's laughter, Naruto smirked and said, "We might not be able to defeat you 3, but the Anbu who are heading over now to investigate the explosion will." When everyone realized that what Naruto had done was not an attack but rather a message to the village asking for assistance, the laughter instantly stopped. "Why, you bastard, I don't like killing children, but I'll make an exception just for you," the ninja growled, his eyes narrowing. He vanished from view after that, only to reappear in front of Naruto and kick him in the chest once more, sending him flying back. But this time, unlike the previous time, the ninja pursued the attack, and as soon as Naruto stood up, he grabbed him by the neck and threw him into the air with a single, forceful hand movement. Using his free hand, he withdrew a kunai while grinning menacingly. "This is it, kid," he declared, grinning menacingly as he observed Naruto gasp for air. "You're going to die for bringing us problems." The two other ninja had advanced on Hinata, and she had resisted them for several seconds with strange palm strikes before they forcefully grabbed her and restraining her. Naruto was not even paying attention to what the man was saying, his eyes darting beyond him to where Hinata was, screaming as she attempted to bite one of her captor's hands, briefly freeing herself. Naruto. Assistance. When one of the ninjas slashed Hinata in the back of the neck, she stopped screaming and collapsed onto the ground, unconscious. Watching the unconscious Hinata being hauled over the shoulder of the enemy ninja caused Naruto's eyes to widen with shock. How could they? What was he going to do? He was having a perfect day with Hinata until he threatened it. Now, Hinata was going to be captured, and he. Naruto felt a deep and burning anger come from inside him when he focused on the man's eyes. The man was choking him and about to strike him dead. Naruto's world abruptly turned black due to oxygen deprivation, and the last thing he saw before his world turned completely black and he passed out. The subconscious of Naruto. Are you going to let him pass away immediately? Speaking loudly into the dark depths, a tall man with long, spiky black hair stood in front of a giant cage. He was dressed in red armor over a dark blue outfit and carried a large kusarigama on his back. A brief pause of silence was followed by the eruption of two enormous orbs, two crimson fox eyes glaring down angrily at the man, and the revelation of an even larger set of fangs as the Kyuubi, the fabled nine-tailed fox, growled out at him. "You believe I'm concerned about people?" He snarled down, his voice so loud and powerful that the shallow waters on the floor trembled with his mere bass. The man who had boldly faced the Kyuubi, Uchiha Madara, scoffed in the face of the enormous demon and crossed his arms impatiently. "It is a known fact that both of us will perish if he does," he said angrily. "O mighty lord of the foxes, don't pretend you don't know about this." The Biju seemed to get agitated by the way he finished the sentence because it seemed to get up in its cage and growl menacingly, his aura making the ripples in the water stronger. "Take caution when addressing me. You forget the power that I have, the power of the Kyuubi." The Kyuubi roared, his enormous fangs swishing in time with his speech. "You are a human. I am not. I don't bleed the way you do. I am capable of healing any kind of wound that other Biju have inflicted upon me, so this little cut on his head is insignificant in comparison." The demon fox's arrogance infuriated Madara, who sighed. "And you, fox, forget who is behind bars, kept within a cage like a misbehaving animal." Whack! With a roar, the Kyuubi sent dangerous crimson chakra and tidal waves of water flying out of the cage and past Madara, but Madara stayed motionless through the wind blast, except for his hair, which flew backwards. The red chakra started seeping out of the cage and encircling Madara, bubbling lava-like and dangerous. "Uchiha, don't think that these bars will stop me from killing you." With the chakra encircling Madara, he roared back at her. Ignoring the bubbling death all around him, which made the limitless water on the ground sizzle and turn to steam, Uchiha Madara closed his eyes. The eternal Mangekyo Sharingan suddenly opened his eyes sharply, and his iris changed to a darker crimson with 3 holes in it and 3 black bars extending from the circle. "You won't be able to kill me in here either, just as you couldn't kill me out in the real world," he declared, his chakra-filled voice booming loud. The red chakra that had been bubbling around him suddenly erupted into black flames, roaring as they burned and making even the Kyuubi tremble. Eventually, the flames subsided into a tiny ring of black fire, and Madara turned and walked away. "It appears that you are unwilling to work with me. All right, I'll tell you what your role is. Namikaze Naruto, our vessel, isn't powerful enough to hold both of our enormous chakras. We will therefore divide our powers among him. I will control his body, consciousness, and eyes, and you will use your chakra to protect his body from the inside out, healing him when he is hurt and shielding him from harm. He and we will become unstoppable when we work together." Even though the beast detested the ninja, the Kyuubi snarled and remained silent, realizing that Madara's reasoning made sense, Trying to overwhelm Naruto with both of their chakras would kill them all. Instead, Madara would take control of Naruto's body, and the Kyuubi would use his powers to heal him when necessary. Bring me a snack." With a menacing chuckle, Madara disappeared from view as they approached the end of the walkway, leaving only the realm of Naruto's subconscious behind. Outside, the boy's eyes suddenly shot open, and instead of the sharp blue ones that had been there seconds before, the head ninja pulled his hand back, readying himself to finish off the unconscious boy in his hand. He stared in shock into crimson eyes with an odd black pattern in them, wondering if this was really the Sharingan, as he had never seen a Sharingan that looked like this before. Before he could even extend his hand, he felt the eyes in front of him suddenly pulse with chakra, and the world around him turned red. Immediately releasing the boy from his grasp, he collapsed to the ground, clenching his head and yelling as loudly as he could. The pain he had never experienced before was pulsating through his body and mind, never ceasing, and his mind was blanking out from the intense agony, refusing to let him pass out. The image of the evil eyes he had seen earlier burned into his mind, staring down at him even as he closed his eyes tightly. His hand reached for the kunai he had dropped, attempting to grasp it and put an end to his excruciating suffering. The head ninja kept screaming as more pain flooded his body as the child's sandal stepped on his forearm, crushing it completely with such incredible force that it cracked the bones and destroyed all of the tissue and muscle. Why wouldn't he die? At this point, Naruto took the man in his hands and raised him to the maximum height his short arms could support while scowling at him through his Mangekyo. "You're not going to die just yet." In a tone that was definitely not his own, Naruto said, "I almost feel sorry for you for what you are about to go through." The man's screaming stopped at that moment, and he fell over, motionless, his eyes rolling back into his head as the two ninja from behind dropped Hinata, their faces filled with horror and confusion at what they saw. The Kyuubi looked around confusedly and laughed happily as a man materialized in front of him inside the cage. "Where am I at this moment? What is happening?" In order to deprive the human of his flesh and taste every last drop of blood that he had been denied for a long time, the Kyuubi leaned forward and opened his mouth. "You brat, what did you do to him?" Shocked that their leader had just begun to scream and then collapsed, lifeless and silent, one of them cried out. The person who spoke was met with a flash of crimson eyes from Naruto, who made him freeze in place with a killer intent the ninja had never before even considered possible. What are you doing to? Naruto's eyes suddenly pulsed with chakra, causing the ninja to stop stuttering. A barely perceptible shimmer flew through the air, and then the ninja's head was sliced off, flying far into the air behind him and the body falling limp down seconds later. The final ninja watched in utter horror as their leader had collapsed after meeting the boy's eyes, and his companion had just been beheaded by the child for simply staring at him. He collapsed to his knees, letting go of the kunai and pleading with the boy for his life. "Please don't hurt me, it's obvious he's outmatched," he yelled, certain he could see a faint glow of red covering the boy's body if he looked closely. For a brief moment, Naruto gave the man a questioning glance, as though he was debating the possibility. No," the man erupted into black flames a moment later, screaming as he fell to the ground and tried to do anything to put out the flames. But after a few minutes of his cries, he became motionless and lay in the grass, the flames still burning on him. The inextinguishable flames of Amaterasu vanished as fast as they had appeared, and Naruto, needing to ensure that the Anbuan police force could identify every body, approached the scene, observing with amusement as the man burned. He sighed, sensing that two young ninja who were hiding in the bushes far away were also approaching him from a distance. He turned to look at the bushes where the two were hiding, and they leapt out into the clearing, clasping kunai. Naruto laughed, amused to see that they were Uchiha. His blue eyes turned dull just before Naruto lost consciousness, but they rolled to the back of his head when he fell to the ground. He considered saying something to them, but ultimately decided against it because he had done enough. Letting go of control over Naruto's body, he retreated back into the boy's subconscious. The hospital in Konoha. Upon regaining consciousness, Naruto closed his eyes and observed his surroundings carefully. It appeared that he was in a spacious bed, and based on the faint beeps of the machinery and the distinct odor, he deduced that he needed to be in the hospital. He rummaged through his memories, trying to recall how he had come to be here. The numerous instances in which he had awakened in a hospital occurred when he was still a small child in the orphanage and the adults had hurt him, usually rendering him unconscious. But why was he here now when he had left the orphanage? Aku. After stalling them for a minute and signaling Konoha with an explosion in the air, he had been sitting with Hinata in front of the waterfall when those weird ninja from Kumo arrived to attack them. Then Hinata was taken into custody after that man choked him. That was where his memory ended, which startled him deeply. Had Hinata made it through the fight? How had he made it through? Given his extraordinary healing powers, it was plausible that the opposing ninja believed him to be dead. However, did that imply that Hinata had been taken prisoner? It's enough to lie down and consider this. He needed to check up on her. With a start, he sat up in his bed, opened his eyes, and got ready to spring out. Just as he was about to carry out his plan, he realized that something was missing. Something extremely important. Everywhere was gloomy. He was unable to see anything. Was it a late night? No, that was not possible. He could hear people outside the room in the distance as well as the sounds of the birds outside. How come his room was so dark? What was happening? Why was he unable to? A weird male voice, deep and strange, spoke next to him. Don't move around so much, kiddo, and Naruto's head snapped in that direction. Why did he have a companion in this room? Once again, the voice said, you don't want to hurt yourself, and he ended with a sigh. When Naruto carelessly looked down at his side to see if he had any kunai, or weapons, the man next to him gave him a grating laugh. He scooted away from him and asked, who are you? And why is everything so dark? The man sighed once more after ceasing to laugh. He said, almost as if he already knew the answer, everything isn't dark. Actually, it's a beautiful day outside in Konoha, like most of them. The room is full of light. Can't you see that for yourself? Disbelieving, Naruto shook his head, refusing to accept the man's reasoning. After scooting off the bed and making his way slowly to where he believed the door to be, Naruto yelled, I don't believe you. Just turn on these lights and let me get out of here. He moved his hands along the wall, feeling for a doorknob or light switch, and after several moments, he found a switch. Feeling relieved, he turned it on. To his dismay, though, the room stayed exactly as dark. Naruto said to himself, I'm blind, which caused the man by his bedside to sigh sorrowfully once more. He said, almost regretfully, yep. That's what the doctors told me, at least, as he leaned back in his chair and made a faint creaking sound. When Naruto heard the strange man say this, he gasped for air. How did that come to be? Had the Japanese ninja removed his eyes? No, he had them still. Then why would his vision suddenly disappear? My dreams, Naruto continued to tell himself as he became aware of the severity of his predicament. How will I live? How will I steal? I'll never be able to become a ninja and, Hinata. The man got up and appeared to move in Naruto's direction. He surprised Naruto by stating, that's not entirely true, Naruto, and revealing his name. You could still. He fell silent, and Naruto clenched his fists, gritting his teeth and shaking his head in silent rage. He slammed his fist into the wall and yelled. No, all of his dreams had been cruelly dashed in front of him, leaving him to say, I'll never be the same. I'll never be able to be useful to anyone. I'll have to stay in a special place, hated and useless forever. For an instant, he pondered whether Hinata would still desire a friendship with someone similar to him. Hinata Senju was with me when we were attacked. What happened to her? Naruto exclaimed, turning to face the area he believed the man to be standing in. She's fine, physically at least. She won't be able to get any alone time for a long while now, and she seemed pretty upset that she couldn't see you. It's been a day since that night, and she tried seeing you yesterday, though it wasn't allowed. With a sigh of relief, Naruto returned to his bed and sat on the edge. Hinata was at least safe. For the rest of his life, he might be blind and ruined, but at least he had lost his sight while rescuing Hinata. As if to console Naruto, the man went on, don't be so upset. I'm sure you can still be a ninja. Furious that this guy would even make fun of him in this way, Naruto shot him a shady glance. Thinking rationally, Naruto exclaimed, the only reason they'd ever let me be on a mission is to kill me, and I won't fall for that. The man sighed, realizing Naruto was unsure. He responded with, maybe, but only if you let them, which surprised Naruto. A real ninja is one who endures, no matter what is thrown at him. He takes his pain and uses it to grow. If you have any sort of chance, then all you need is the guts never to give up. It's all about guts, kid. Naruto's head turned to face the talking adults as the door to the room opened and several of them entered before he could reply. Several adults surrounded him, saying, "Ah, it appears the subject is awake," which made him squirm uncomfortably because he couldn't even see them. Another adult said, "Perfect. I'll summon the Hokage immediately," and then the door opened and shut, alerting Naruto to the man's departure. A few moments later, Naruto jerked back, slapping the hand away as someone touched his face and making him wince. The man who had touched him exclaimed, "Oh, that's right. You still must be surprised from your lack of vision." Shaking his head, Naruto scoffed. By now, this was old news. "I try to be as calm as possible, but I already know that I'm blind," he said. Pointing to the side, he concluded, "That guy told me," introducing the new adults to the man he had been speaking with. There was a little silence and shuffling for a while before the doctor, or Naruto, cleared his throat clumsily, almost as if. The man asked, "Can you explain? Who exactly told you of your condition?" Which made Naruto arch his eyebrows in equal confusion. Pointing to the location where the man's voice had previously been heard, Naruto repeated, "That guy. He told me that I'm blind, and that Hinata is okay, and that I've been out cold for a day." More quiet. Naruto was certain that the doctors were observing him with a sense of insanity and making notes about him. "What, is he not there anymore?" was Naruto's incredulous question as he tried to figure out what was going on. "I was just talking with him before you guys walked in here. Literally seconds before you guys came in." "Oh no, this quietness. When you couldn't see as clearly, silence was awful," the doctor told Naruto. "There was never anyone here," as the latter looked at the voice as if it were insane. "While your information is somehow correct, no man was in the room when we entered, and no one has visited you since your arrival." Furious to the point of collapse, Naruto sank into his bed. He was now talking to fictitious people in the room while blind. Perhaps that was his Genkei Keke. The door opened once more, and as another man entered the room, everything quieted down. Naruto instinctively straightened his seat when he sensed the man's overwhelming authority. "Hokage-sama!" A few grown-ups exclaimed simultaneously, raising Naruto's eyebrows. Though that was the only time he had ever met this Hokage, it had been after he had been caught stealing. The blonde shifted in his seat as this Hokage approached the side of his bed and seemed to be studying Naruto intently. In an aged and weary voice, the man inquired, "What is his condition?" The Hokage was meant to be one of the village's strongest, if not the strongest, right? Upon further reflection, he wondered how someone so elderly could possess any kind of power. "Physically, he is completely fine," the previous doctor said with respect right away. "All of his previous wounds have been healed completely, no doubt because of ahem. However, it has been confirmed by the boy himself that he is indeed blind, though Naruto seems to claim that he heard this from another person moments before we entered the room." The Hokage nodded and said nothing more, earning Naruto a little more respect than he had previously. Unlike the other doctors, he hadn't assumed he was insane after having his imaginary conversation. "Very well. Escort him with me to my office and summon the council immediately," the Hokage gave an order to a person that Naruto was unable to see. But not long after, he was dragged out of the bed and led out the door by hand in a somewhat rough manner. All he could hope was that this council of adults was a nicer bunch than any he had ever met in his life. The subconscious of Naruto Madara strolled through the vast corridors of Naruto's subconscious, the sound of his footsteps resonating throughout the damp space. He shook his head, disgusted as ever at the mental state in which he was stuck, saying it was like being in a sewer. It is unimaginable that he, of all people, would wind up in a place as repulsive as this, let alone have the Kyuubi as a jailmate. Regarding the enormous fox, he transformed into a different hallway that had enormous bars at its terminus. He could hear the fox breathing deeply behind the seal, if he paid close attention. It was hidden in the shadows. Madara yelled, "Kyuubi," boosting his voice with chakra and making it explode with strength. "Let us talk. We have much to discuss." The hall gave way to a small shudder at that very moment as the Kyuubi rose to its feet and drew closer to the bars so Madara could see its face. Madara went on, "Naruto is blind," pausing briefly between his words. "We cannot allow this." The Kyuubi laughed heartily from behind its cage, obviously enjoying this. "Oh, And why should I care whether or not my host is blind? Madara laughed too, and the Kyuubi stopped talking. To extend your lifespan, wise fox. Naruto being blind will likely cause some ninja to be able to kill him easily in the near future. And that means you and I die as well. You already understand that the three of us are tied together by that seal until death, right? A low hum from the Kyuubi sent a deep vibration reverberating through the hallway. It answered, I do understand that it is this seal that holds us in bond, as it fixed its gaze on the seal affixed to the front bars of the enormous cage, imprisoning them. It growled down at Madara, so why don't you free us now and rip that piece of paper off? That seal is much more than a piece of paper, declared Madara, casting a disgusting glance at the accursed seal. If the Yondaime was famous for only one thing, it was his talent with seals. Only Naruto can remove it. If I were to attempt to touch it, either nothing would happen or I would be blown away. This reality infuriated the Kyuubi, who growled once again. Still, Madara went on, having stated his case earlier. Using the Kyuubi's arrogance against him, Madara remarked, You claimed that you could heal a stab wound to the head. He asked, in a tone that alternated between sincerity and mockery. Impressive though it may be, can the great Biju of 9 Tails heal blindness? Is that within your power? Madara was shown the full force of the Kyuubi's power as he roared down at her, sending water flying in that direction and sending her long, spiky black hair flying backward. In an equally mocking tone, the Kyuubi asked, Blindness. Even that can be healed with my power. Nothing is out of my reach. Tell me, Madara. Why did Naruto become blind in the first place? As if he already knew the answer. He responded despite Madara's disgusting sneer. Sharingan is only for Uchiha. We have the greatest spiritual chakra, or Kekkei Genkai, which grants us Dujutsu. But, just as I was able to obtain the eternal Mangekyo, so can others without the Uchiha bloodline limit. To use Sharingan, a normal person lacking a Dujutsu must replace his or her eyes with the Uchiha's while the Sharingan is activated. Nevertheless, since the Sharingan is not drawing from the advanced chakra, it will severely deplete the user's chakra while it is in use, and they will not be able to deactivate it because they lack the advanced spiritual chakra. However, the Sharingan can become a Mangekyo Sharingan with practice, though using that will strain the eye even more than before. All of this is accurate, but a Mangekyo Sharingan cannot be bestowed upon a layperson who has not attained it for themselves. The Mangekyo can only be awakened by the individual, and if you already possess it, you can absorb another's to amplify your own. Having the Mangekyo Sharingan without having activated it yourself has the simple consequence of making a person blind. Naruto might be able to fuse his chakra with mine, but he won't be able to use the Mangekyo without risk until he fully fuses with mine and manages to acquire a Sharingan. Through him, I was able to activate my eternal Mangekyo, but the result was that he became blind. Not having known any of this beforehand, the Kyuubi nodded. But if Naruto somehow activates a Sharingan, he can use it perfectly because he has your chakra. Glad that the Kyuubi understood, Madara nodded. That's right. Naruto's spiritual chakra is enhanced by my chakra mingling with his, unlike a normal person who would take another Uchiha's Sharingan, like Kakashi Hatake from Konoha, for example. It would drain him a little, but our chakra would have merged so much over the next few years that it wouldn't drain him at all. The Yondaime seal permits the jailer's chakra to unite with the host's, but since there are two of us, it also unknowingly incorporates both of our chakras into Naruto. Your chakra, together with my Kekkei Genkai of spiritual chakra, are giving him strength and healing power. But, even though he may receive all of my chakra, he will never activate his own Sharingan, because his eyes physically aren't that of Uchiha. And, even if he absorbs your chakra as well, he will not take on any traits of a fox, because he is physically not a fox. That means that if you had taken over his body and used your chakra through him, it would have hurt him. While me taking over him made him go blind, you taking over would most likely peel off his skin. The Kyuubi said, yet even that can be healed by me, as he sat back down in his cage. I will heal our host of his blindness, though it may take even me a while. However, I am very interested in what you have planned. I of all creatures know that there is more to your thoughts than meets the eyes. With a menacing laugh, Madara turned away from the Kyuubi. Only time will tell, Lord of the Foxes. For now, Naruto will have to have vision before I can plan further. The meeting room of Hokage whoosh, whoosh. The sound of heavy banging reverberated throughout the Hokage's private office, making him wince. The council members entered his office one by one and took their places at the desks. Approximately 5 years had passed since the Kyuubi attack and the cherished Yondaime's passing. To everyone's relief, he had been re-elected to the position of Hokage, well, except for the Uchiha clan. They were very disappointed when their wishes were not fulfilled because they had been more or less expecting one of their members, the clan head in particular, to assume the position of leader of the village. Though there were moments like these when he genuinely wondered, Hiruzen had believed that his re-election had been for the best. It appeared that he would have to cope with the annoying and dishonest council once more. And among the things he had most enjoyed about his oh-so-brief retirement was not having to do that. Sarutobi yelled, "Silence," and put an end to the conversation that was taking place in front of him. While the meeting was going on, Naruto was presently sitting in a separate room under the observation of multiple Anbu. We will now start the meeting to decide Uzumaki Naruto's fate. Before we make the decision, I will tell you the information we got the other night about what happened to Naruto, which came from a trustworthy source, a ninja who was following Naruto for protection. Some angry and inquisitive murmurs were raised when Hiruzen said, late in the evening, around 6:30, Naruto was seen walking out to one of the training grounds with Hinata Senju. The two enjoyed the view and sat together in front of the waterfall until 3 enemy ninja for Kumo appeared on the scene. Itachi and Shisui Uchiha, who were on the scene, made the decision to remain hidden and investigate the reason behind the enemy ninja's arrival. Before they attacked, the Kumo ninja claimed that they were after Hinata for her bloodline limit. Naruto bravely defended Hinata, putting her safety ahead of his own, and he managed to get away by hurling smoke bombs and kunai at the opposing ninja. His schemes backfired, and he was retracted. Surprisingly, when Naruto had nothing else to do, he used his last explosion tag to alert the police force and the Anbu to their location. Hiruzen was happy to hear the slight rumblings now, as the council had undoubtedly been impressed by Naruto's choices. After that, Naruto was defeated and Hinata Senju was rendered unconscious by the other ninja. Against all odds, though, Naruto managed to defeat the 3 ninja on his own. The ninja who was closest to his starting position perished from unidentified causes, another ninja was killed by being beheaded, and the final ninja passed away with numerous burn marks on him. Soon after Naruto passed out, Itachi and Shisui were there to make sure Hinata was okay as the Anbu arrived on the scene. When he was done, there was a brief period of silence before the council erupted in noise that the Hokage was unable to understand. "Be silent," he yelled, quieting the council, "I'm not done. Since Kumo claims they had no intention of killing any of our ninja, they are upset that 3 of their best ninja were slain. And as a result, they are demanding that we hand Naruto over to them in order to avoid starting the next major shinobi war. That is absurd," as the Jonin commander of Konoha, Shikaku of the Nara clan actually shouted out, interrupting the Hokage, and people paid attention to him. "How can they request that we send them one of our lives, when they had intended to capture our Senju? A fool would never consent to those plans." "I disagree," Hiruzen nodded, acknowledging the Nara clan head's wisdom. "This is the ideal chance for us to get rid of that demon," exclaimed a non-ninja head as he got up from his seat. "If the Kyuubi was able to take control of him, then it's obvious that he is too dangerous." Hiruzen held back the urge to slap his palm to his head, but refrained. There were more than a few murmurs of agreement on that statement, and the council member sat back down with a smug grin on his face. How could any rational member of his council agree to something like that? Shibi of the Aburame clan wisely stated, "We seem to be forgetting that Naruto is the only reason we still have possession over Hinata. Without his protection, Konoha would have lost the Senju bloodline limit, and Kumo would raise it as their own. Logically, Naruto should be commended for his bravery and quick thinking." The Hokage agreed with this statement, but he was concerned that very few, if any, of the council members agreed. "I would disagree," said Tsume Inuzuka. "I blame the Hyuga clan as much as I blame Naruto. Hinata Senju would never have been able to walk around Konoha unhindered and exposed with that scum if she had been under my clan. She was supported by more people than not, to the point where the meeting nearly got out of control. Naruto ought to be eliminated." Above the cacophony, A non-ninja member exclaimed, "He is too dangerous. He was overtaken by the Kyuubi. Moreover, he has no clan to back him. Nobody can attest to his survival." Wrong. The head of the most powerful clan in Konoha, Fugaku Uchiha, observed silently during the meeting before speaking up for the first time, saying, "Naruto did well to protect Hinata, and he will not be given to Kumo, under direct orders of the Uchiha clan." This caused the entire council to fall silent. This statement shocked the council, and after a silent moment, one brave clan member spoke out against him. "Despite being the leader of the Uchiha, you have no power over Naruto. It is not for you to decide." The man who had spoken up fell silent. "Incorrect again," said Fugaku. "As of now, I, head of the Uchiha clan, with the consent of my own Uchiha council, have decided to hereby adopt Naruto Uzumaki, making him a Uchiha." Everyone in the room, including the Hokage, fell silent even more at that moment, if silence could be described at all, as they all looked in shock at Fugaku. By defending Hinata from those three formidable Kumo ninja, Naruto demonstrated his potential as an exceptional ninja, Fugaku went on. "It seems that every other clan is oblivious to his strength. The Uchiha have the best eyes in the world, and they were not blind to Naruto's abilities." At that moment, a few members of the Ninja Council appeared to have a eureka moment as they realized that Naruto was a Jinchuriki and had defeated multiple Kumo Jonin. "Well then, why should your clan adopt Naruto even if he was available for adoption?" Another ninja, desiring Naruto's power, inquired. "Aha, do not deceive oneself." Fugaku smacked his hands on the table and spoke authoritatively, saying, "No other clan has ever expressed interest in Naruto. The Uchiha have always been watching him closely. The Uchiha and Hyuga clans are the most powerful in Konoha. The Hyuga have already adopted Hinata Senju, another strong child, so they will be unable to argue against this. Please speak up right away if any of your ninja clans want to dispute with the Uchiha about who should adopt Naruto." Silence. No one, not even the Hyuga, dared to speak now. Everyone knew that if Fugaku wanted to adopt someone now, there would be no stopping him. The Hyuga was the only other clan powerful enough to argue with them, and they had recently taken Hinata Senju into their fold. There was a somewhat unspoken rule that a major clan could not adopt more than one strong child or ninja into their clan, but every council member was aware of this beforehand. As of right now, the Uchiha clan has adopted Naruto Uzumaki, who will henceforth be named Naruto Uchiha, Hiruzen said, breaking the silence. "Very well. After our meeting, Fugaku, I would like you to bring me a clan consent form endorsing your idea so you can sign Naruto's ownership to the Uchiha." As I mentioned earlier, Naruto's potential was not concealed from our careful observation. "The consent form of the Uchiha has already been signed by all my elders," Fugaku said, taking a scroll out of his pocket and setting it on the table. "As a clan, we have been thinking about this for a while, and we are ready. Now, as the clan head of Naruto Uchiha, it will not allow him to be sent to Kumo to be executed, and that decision is now within my power," the council muttered, somewhat surprised that Fugaku had planned so far in advance. "If you would like, tell Kumo how foolish a war would be and remind him of our strength and our allies. Right now, a peace treaty would be the most sensible course of action." As Naruto's owner, Hiruzen was able to determine what would happen to him and whether or not he should be put to death. "Very well," Hiruzen nodded, concurring with Fugaku. "The council has concluded. When it comes time to choose the best course of action with regard to Kumo, I will call you all together." Someone else, "Put Naruto away for the time being." Rejected. All of the council members eventually left the room, save for Fugaku, who was happy with the way things had turned out and was sitting there grinning with a scroll in his hand. Having followed the Sandaime into his office, Fugaku's grandfather went to a large shelf on the side and flipped through a variety of papers before he pulled out a file labeled Naruto Uzumaki, which he placed on the desk and opened, bringing out other correct files that were required in order for Fugaku to sign Naruto to the Uchiha. Fugaku also placed his own scroll down, along with the signatures of his elders, demonstrating to Hiruzen that his clan approved of the choice. Hiruzen sighed and looked up at Fugaku, who was wearing a serious expression instead of the smug one he had before. The old cage scowled, tired of giving Naruto over to the Uchiha, something he hadn't wanted to do in the first place, but even he knew it would be for the best. All the Hokage could do was punish those who were found to have physically harmed Naruto, though he couldn't even do that if Naruto had stolen from them. Naruto had lived in poverty his entire life, and the Hokage had kept his hands clean from the situation. After hearing about Naruto's expulsion from the orphanage, he had also desired to give him his own apartment, but he was unable to do so until Naruto turned 12. He had also considered adopting Naruto, so that the child could reside in the Sarutobi compound, but that was also forbidden. The Sarutobi clan, even though he was Hokage, had little influence over the council. If the adoptable child is a ninja, or has the potential to be one, the adoption requires the approval of the council before the child can be adopted into any particular clan. He was aware that if he applied to adopt Naruto, the council would not approve of it, as the majority of them detested him. On the other hand, the most powerful clan, the Uchiha, was able to adopt Naruto with ease, as their route went fa. With genuine curiosity in his gaze, Sarutobi questioned Fugaku, "Why do you really want to adopt Naruto? Were you sincere in your remarks at the council?" As Hokage, he could not overturn the council's ruling, but he still needed to gain a deeper understanding of Fugaku, so he inquired as to why. With no malice in his voice or eyes, Fugaku said, "There are many reasons as to why I decided to adopt Naruto into the Uchiha. Though we of the Uchiha know that better than any other clan. Naruto has the potential to be a great ninja." Hiruzen arched an eyebrow at this, wondering what the man was getting at. The Uchiha respect Naruto for his willingness to give his own life in order to achieve a different goal. Every single Uchiha ninja would give their life to protect the clan, something Naruto may do in the future. Moreover, Naruto is a Jinchuriki, which naturally endows him with immense power. The Uchiha knew more, even though that wasn't enough for any other clan to adopt him. As I stated before, the Uchiha have the greatest eyes of the world. It didn't take us long to conclude that the Kyuubi wasn't the only one sealed within Naruto. The Hokage's eyes widened in shock at this. "Yes," Fugaku said, "the Uchiha have concluded that Madara Uchiha, our ancestor, was sealed into Naruto as well that fateful night of the attack." The Hokage's expression of astonishment gradually faded over a few moments. He had previously thought that Danzo, his advisors, and himself were the only people who were aware of Madara's presence within Naruto. However, Fugaku was also hinting that the rest of the Uchiha had figured it out. He stammered, unable to comprehend how the Uchiha had discovered it. "It was really pretty simple," Fugaku said. "We actually guessed it days after the night of the attack, but we didn't want to act out on our thoughts until we knew for sure. The night the Kyuubi attacked Konoha, there was a man on top of the great beast, a man who could fight with the Yondaime on equal levels. Not only that, but there were black flames, undeniably those of Amaterasu, which were headed towards the village. Only a Uchiha could produce those flames and one with a Mangekyo nonetheless. We immediately concluded that it had to be Madara on top of the Kyuubi, and not only that, but that Madara had to be sealed inside of Naruto." Hiruzen sank back into his chair, his thoughts worn out. The Uchiha were right when they claimed to have the greatest eyes. Silently, the Sandaime asked, glancing closely at Fugaku. "So that's it. Naruto's power is the only true reason as to why you want to adopt him. Not to save him from Kumo. You do know that he is still blind, don't you?" For a brief moment, Fugaku froze, but the Hokage managed to catch it. Following a few quiet moments, the Uchiha's leader approached the sizable window nearby, which displayed the entirety of Konoha as well as the Hokage's monument on the opposite side. His typically hardened eyes softened as he focused especially on the monument's final face. "Well, that's not everything," Fugaku finally said in a low voice. It's what he would want me to do. I don't care that Naruto is blind." It was the third time that day that Hiruzen had been totally taken aback by Fugaku. "You know about Naruto's real ancestry?" he inquired, his eyes widening, in a feeble voice. "How is that possible?" With a light laugh, Fugaku continued to study the face of the Yondaime on the monument. He could almost imagine himself seeing someone sitting on top of the fort's head if he narrowed his eyes very much. "As I said before, the Uchiha have the best eyes in the world, but, even without them, I would be able to recognize the son of my best friend from a mile away. Outside, perched atop the Hokage's monument, Naruto gazed over the entirety of Konoha below. Did he really look? Perhaps, but he was deceiving himself. He had woken up blind just this morning, and it was difficult for him to deal with his emotions. His main desire was to see Hinata and find out if she was okay. Sniffling to himself, he encircled his arms around himself and breathed in the morning breeze. He needed a hug right now and didn't know how else to express it. He required a conversation partner. Hinata was necessary for him. Even though he is far more intelligent than other children his age and has accomplished a lot of things that others cannot, he is still only 5 years old. He needed someone to come give him a hug and reassure him that everything would be okay. He wanted a mother and a father. Naturally, though, he lacked all of that. With the exception of the brief periods he spent with Hinata, he was forced to live alone his entire life. He had no one to cry to when he was by himself on the streets and accidentally cut himself with a kunai, scraped his knee on the ground, or struck his head. All he had to do was swallow it. Yo, Naruto. When Naruto heard a voice, he snapped around, realizing it was a child, most likely a few years older than he was. With a defensive yell, "Who are you?" he produced a kunai that he had amassed throughout his territory. "What do you want with me?" The newcomer chuckled a little, but Naruto wasn't sure what was funny. The figure remarked, "You know, I've always been impressed by your skills," but Naruto didn't even slightly put down his kunai. "You could almost call me your #1 fan. And now, even though you can't see, you've made it up to the Hokage's monument while most people would mope in their houses for weeks. Not that you have a house." Not getting a response, Naruto growled at the person. If only he could see, he would have had enough of these enigmatic figures for one day. Even without eyes, he could still tell that this was not the same person he had spoken to in the hospital earlier that day. Once more, Naruto demanded, getting ready to launch his kunai. "Who are you?" Though it wasn't like Naruto could see that, the person raised his hands in defense, seemingly reading Naruto's thoughts. He exclaimed, "Whoa, whoa," with a constant hint of mischief in his voice. "That's no way to treat one of our family members, especially since you're new to the clan." The stranger called this out, and Naruto stumbled over himself, not believing what he had just heard. "What?" he exclaimed once more, losing faith in this man. "I've been sent to collect you, Naruto. After watching you for a couple of weeks closely, our clan has finally decided to adopt you. Others may not see it, but we know the potential you possess. How else would you be able to outsmart shop owners, Chunin, and the occasional Chunin and Anbu, dodging them through buildings and underground tunnels?" Naruto's pale blue eyes widened in shock at the news, but he was unable to reply. This person knew how to get away from his enemies, so his facts were true. "Come with me, Naruto. It's time to escort you to your new home. I'm Shisui, by the way, Shisui Uchiha." With helplessness, Naruto's kunai hit the ground, and his mouth dropped in dismay. Hyuga clan, after a week with a warm embrace, a stunning woman with long brown hair smiled down at Hinata. Though Hinata's vision was blurry, she was able to see her mother's love for her, and she extended her little arms to play with her nose. At that moment, a man entered the room and peered down at Hinata with tenderness. He'd kissed her mother, then picked Hinata up and smiled, swinging her around slowly in his secure arms until she burst into excited giggles. But the more he spun around with her, the less the world seemed to surround them, until finally, Hinata woke up from her dream and sat up in her bed. Though she knew she had to be just a baby, she occasionally had realistic dreams about her parents, like this one. But all of the vivid images in her head would vanish as soon as she woke up. Despite having recently seen them, she could not recall the appearance of her mother or father. With a sigh, she sprang out of bed in her nightgown and retrieved her cuddly fox kitsune from the bedside. After making her bed, she put on her usual kimono. Hopefully, Hiyashi wouldn't choose to train with her until the afternoon, at which point she wouldn't have to change into her training attire. She headed to the kitchen of the Hyuga compound, holding her stuffed animal close to her heart for the time being. Although it was fairly large because it prepared food for the clan's dining hall, she liked it because the chefs, clearly members of the branch family, would playfully interact with her and teach her how to cook, which she found enjoyable. She would rather be a cook like them than a ninja, given the option. She detested the thought of having to jab people painfully with her hands while using juken. Maybe she could learn how to be a medic nin too. Even though Naruto healed fairly quickly on his own, she was able to heal wounded ninja, which seemed to be much more fun than having to harm them. Her friend instantly came to mind, and a sad expression crossed her face. Not only had Naruto protected her during their fight, but he had also suffered injuries in the process. Somehow, he'd kept the enemy ninja at bay until the Anbu showed up to protect her after she'd been rendered unconscious. Naruto's blindness in the hospital was the thing that hurt her the most, even more than the bruises from that night. When she was in the hospital the morning after the attack, Neji had first told her all of this. She had tried to see Naruto as soon as she was free, but Hiyashi had forbade it. She still hadn't been able to see Naruto despite all these days. She prayed for his safety. Uchiha complex for Naruto. Things were going surprisingly well. Living with the Uchiha clan, the most powerful clan in Konoha, was a significant turnabout for someone who had grown up in a hateful environment. He had so many advantages ever since he moved in. He was treated like any other person by the Uchiha people. Nobody gave him a dirty look, hurt him, or did anything. They all offered him dinner invitations, smiles, and friendly waves when he passed by. It was truly amazing. Naruto now had a place to live, next to his own manor, in a real house. Fugaku-sama, the head of the Uchiha and a very kind person. 13-year-old Shisui Uchiha, who was always grinning, offered Naruto a place to live in his spacious home. Similar to Naruto, Shisui was orphaned when he lost his parents in a battle against the Kyuubi, a creature that Naruto had discovered had attempted to destroy the village. The house was large and had extra rooms for Naruto to stay in because it was designed for a family of 3. It was amazing to be a housewife. It was everything he had ever dreamed of. Warmth in the cold, cold in the warmth, shelter from the rain, and safety from strangers. And to think that, after going blind, he had assumed his life had ended. Speaking of blindness, the Uchiha welcomed him in spite of his impairment, and, amazingly, Naruto sensed that his vision was getting closer to perfect every day. When it was very bright or very dark, he could almost detect light instead of total darkness. He told Naruto that it was possible that his eyes would heal and he would be able to see again, even though he had assumed that Fugaku-sama would call him crazy because he was blind. In any case, Naruto shared a house with Shisui and had access to an unlimited supply of money that he could use to pay for food on his own, thanks to Fugaku and the elders, and for other purposes. But since he understood the value of money at an early age, he made the prudent decision to save it. When Naruto first got money, he went into the Konoha baker's shop with Shisui, of course. Just as the baker was going to hit him and call him a thief, Naruto put the money and bread on the counter, which was more payback than Naruto could have ever imagined. The nicest thing about it all is that since Naruto had been declared Uchiha, none of the villagers would dare harm him. He could never have imagined a clan as great as the Uchiha. For Naruto, this was amazing because he had grown up alone and now he had this enormous family that loved him. To him, Shisui was practically a brother. In addition, he had friends other than Hinata to play with for the first time in his life. One of the boys Naruto had met upon entering the Uchiha compound was Fugaku-sama's son. For 2 days, Fugaku allowed Naruto to stay in his own home while others cleaned and furnished Naruto's new residence, a bed, refrigerator, and other appliances, among other things. And Naruto got to know him. The boy was introduced to Naruto as Sasuke Uchiha, and the two became fast friends. Like Naruto, Sasuke Uchiha loved adventures, and when Naruto told Sasuke about all the amazing things he did, like stealing and escaping from ninja through abandoned buildings and water tunnels, Sasuke shockingly claimed that he was super jealous. It surprised Naruto that a boy who was fed was envious of someone who had to steal food on a daily basis. Nevertheless, the boy and her had gotten along well, and they even had similar dreams. One day, they both hoped to become strong ninjas so they could take on exciting missions. Naruto got out of his comfortable, real bed with caution, made his way to the kitchen, and then hopped back in. As he was going to search for Shisui, he recalled what he had mentioned to him the previous evening. "Yo, Naruto. Sorry, but I have to go on a mission next morning with Itachi again. There's food in the fridge and the money is in the cabinet, so you can do what you want all day. I promise to train with you this evening when I come back. You better believe that." Naruto laughed, recalling his previous words. At the tender age of 13, Shisui was a formidable ninja and a member of the Anbu. Really? He informed Naruto that he had graduated from the academy alongside Itachi at the age of 7, and at the age of 10, he had attained the rank of Chunin. 7. That meant that Naruto was 2 years older. Naruto had asked him to train him so that he could one day become a ninja as well because he was so strong. Shisui consented, and despite Naruto's current blindness, he would carefully train him in his spare time. In the hopes of playing with Sasuke during the day, Naruto cautiously left his house and headed over to his aim. Yahiko, worn out from the epic battle that had lasted for a long time, stood wearily far away from his opponent. This battle would decide not just his fate but also the fate of the entire world. He needed to prevail. However, victory would not come easily, particularly since Hanzo of the Salamander, one of the world's most formidable ninja, would be his opponent. Yahiko had planned to face Hanzo eventually, but not until he had had a few more years of training and would be clearly superior. Hanzo appeared to have read his thoughts in advance and chosen to strike first in order to kill him before he became too powerful. But Hanzo had not realized how much power Yahiko possessed already. Yahiko had been fighting Hanzo with equal strength even with his salamander summoning, which surprised both Hanzo and most of the village of Rain, who were watching from a distance. The majority of the village gathered in the rain to witness the election of the village's new leader, as the battle had been raging for 30 minutes. Would that Aim's elections resembled those of every other village? Hanzo yelled, "Give up, boy," with a low, gravelly voice full of chakra. "There's no way you can beat me now. You have no experience." With panting heavily, Yahiko's perfect eyes caught sight of Konan, who had been holding her hands in prayer the entire fight, far in the distance. For the sake of the entire world, yes, but mostly for her and Nagato, he had to win this. He brought his chakra to life by slapping his palms together and turned back to face Hanzo. From a distance, Hanzo laughed, ready for anything Yahiko might throw at him. But Hanzo broke through his own seals and called out for everyone to hear. Sweden. Bakusu Shoha. When Hanzo extended his hands, water erupted in front of his palms and onto the earth, causing enormous tidal waves to come towards Yahiko. The waves were so big and powerful that they even lifted Hanzo's enormous summon off the ground. The enormous waves, large enough to kill Yahiko if he was unprotected, zoomed toward him, and his eyes narrowed. But from past experience, he knew that Hanzo was not specialized in using his jutsu to kill people instantly. Rather, he was unmatched in his underwater movement. If he didn't get away first, he could kill him in the water in a matter of seconds due to his rapid movement. His undersea jutsu was equally astounding. Yahiko was unable to attempt to block this attack. Either he had to destroy it or avoid it. With a swift thought, he raised his hands and called forth his personal chakra attack. Shinra Tensai. With that, a great vertical wave of force shot out of Yahiko's hands and was traveling twice as fast in the direction of the wave in front of him, slicing a path through the earth with overwhelming strength. Yahiko's wave of force easily broke through the water when the two connected, dividing it in half and causing it to flow around Yahiko. Though Hanzo was able to dodge it by jumping to the side just in time, the wave force struck his salamander summon squarely in the face as it continued through the water. Upon landing on his personal lake of water, Hanzo let out a curse and observed his summons evaporate. Hanzo quickly realized what to do and leapt to the center of the ground, where his water was split in half by the force wave, and continued to fly through seals. Sweden. Dai Suiro no Jutsu. The water, which had been flowing in numerous directions, suddenly started to circle massively around Yahiko and Hanzo, encroaching upon them both. With a curse, Yahiko looked around him as the water's 100-foot waves started to close in around him. Yahiko completed more hand seals before the waves could approach, yelling out, "Doten! Marui Doryuheki!" Putting his hands in the earth, he caused a massive subterranean tremor from each one that surrounded the incoming water's perimeter. The water was totally blocked when he pushed chakra into the technique, causing a huge circle of earth to burst out of the ground. The ground rose to a height of hundreds of feet, encircling the two in an arena. Hanzo narrowed his eyes at Yahiko as small amounts of water spilled over the wall, stopping the main attack. But Yahiko didn't back down. Instead, he kept attacking. Doten. Yomi Numa. In an instant, everything in front of him was consumed by a massive muddy swamp that covered the entire earth. Though there was nowhere to land, Hanzo was able to read the attack and was able to jump into the air in time. Still, He wasn't finished with her. He exclaimed, "Sweden! Kaisaku Sweben!" with fierceness. Water shot out of his hand like a long whip right away, and he whipped it in a circle. The Great Wall collapsed as the water whip extended, cutting through the earth and long enough to reach the walls surrounding him. Hanzo landed on the wall without incident since the wall had collapsed and all of the water was flowing in their direction. Yahiko, on the other hand, watched in dismay as the water waves crashed over his collapsed wall and raced toward him, determined to crush him. As the water drew closer to Yahiko, Hanzo grinned, knowing he was about to win. But just before the water all fell in one piece, Yahiko raised his hands and two distinct chakra orbs emerged from them. His smile vanished, though. Just before the water hit him, all of the enormous and amazing amounts quickly vanished into his chakra and were absorbed into his hands. When the water completely drained into Yahiko, Hanzo's eyes widened, and he had to jump off the ground of his own lake before he was absorbed too. Once the water had completely evaporated, Yahiko stood gasping and fixed his opponent with a determined expression. Hanzo was about to lose hope when Yahiko held his hands together in the snake seal. Suddenly, massive wooden pillars rose up out of the ground, sending Hanzo hurtling away and onto the hard ground some distance away from Yahiko. The large assembly gasped in unison upon witnessing Hanzo fly away from the scene, obviously injured. Most of the audience started applauding Yahiko, hoping he would prevail. They wanted someone better to take over because Hanzo had been a cruel dictator to them for a very long time. Yahiko was only 15, but in the battlefield he was displaying true maturity. Hanzo was just starting to get up off the ground when Yahiko appeared in front of him. It was finally time for him to demonstrate the Rinnegan's power. Raiden. Jabashi. He extended his hands and sent a wave of electricity in Hanzo's direction. He was unable to dodge the broad strike. He was struck, and as the electricity shot through his body, he screamed in agony and dropped to his knees. Gazing at a gasping Hanzo, Yahiko's breathing became labored. That was it. It was time for him to finally take care of Hanzo. He clapped his hands together, ignoring the cheers from the crowd in the distance, and used all of his remaining chakra to perform his final moves, which would eliminate the leader of Rain. Focusing, he closed his eyes and pressed his chakra into his hands. His eyes suddenly snapped open with such force that he threw his hands forward and held them towards Hanzo. Shibaku Tensai. For the first time in his life, Hanzo felt a pressure build up in his chest and looked up in true fear. He made an attempt to move, to leap away, to shunshin, or do anything else, but he was immobile. He felt like there was a strong force holding him to the ground because he was stuck there in some way. The ground rumbled around Yahiko's opponent as he continued to focus his chakra on Hanzo, as if an earthquake had struck the region. He let out a scream as he fully committed his chakra into it, ensuring the technique would hold true. If this didn't work out, Hanzo could easily kill him later. It needed to function. At that moment, the earth in a 10-meter radius around Hanzo suddenly tore apart and shot in the direction of the motionless man. Hanzo was squashed like a bug in the center of the earth, which in the region he had just left had taken the shape of a sizable sphere. The villagers became quiet, gazing in wonder. Is that the case? Is that Hanzo's last breath? Could he get out of there? Yahiko flew through more seals, slapping his palms on the ground and yelling, almost reading their thoughts. Doden. Yomi Numa. The enormous sphere that held Hanzo began to slowly sink into the winding swamp as the entire surface beneath it turned to mud. Yahiko directed his chakra until the enormous ball was fully immersed in the mud. Yahiko allowed it to sink deeper into the ground for a few more seconds before pulsing his chakra into it. Everything instantly hardened, burying Hanzo deep beneath the surface of the earth for all time. Stillness. As the adrenaline wore off and the realization dawned on Yahiko, the only sound he could hear was his own labored breathing. Just now, he had vanquished Hanzo of the Salamander. Now he was the Amikage, the leader of Rain. He was about to collapse from exhaustion, but before he could do so, Conan caught him in her arms and shed happy tears. Suddenly, over the never-ending rain, the whole village hidden in the rain broke into thunderous applause for their new leader. As soon as he heard the cheers, Yahiko looked up at the weakly crying Conan and smiled. She had to shout over the roars of the village, "You did it," to him. "You beat him, the village, they're cheering for you." He straightened up again with her assistance, and the applause intensified. With a smile on his face, he gestured to the village with his other arm while maintaining his balance on Conan. It was him. They would make Jiraiya-sensei proud. But what would Nagato say to them? Itachi and Shisui were unable to fully comprehend what had happened as they gazed in amazement at the battlefield in front of them. Without a doubt, what they had just seen was the greatest battle either of them would ever see in their lives. The Hokage were dispatched to look into reports that a civil war was breaking out in AIM. They managed to sneak into the village hidden in rain and learn what was going on. They arrived in time to see the fight breaking out between the forces of Rain's leader, Hanzo, and a little boy with orange hair. It was shocking to them both that the guy battling Hanzo was almost as young as they were, which was really amazing. Hanzo was powerful enough to defeat the Sannin all at once, and this ninja, the one with the orange hair, had demonstrated just as much strength in their battle against Hanzo. Throughout the fight, they believed Hanzo had won multiple times with his salamander, but the boy would always get back up and carry on fighting. They both started to leave the village after the fight, when everyone in it let out a loud cheer. They had to inform the Hokage of this amazing news. AIM had a new leader and Hanzo was no longer alive. After a year at the age of 6, Naruto's life had undoubtedly taken the best turn he could have ever imagined. He had brothers and friends in addition to being a Uchiha and having a family. Apart from that, he was no longer blind. Over the course of several weeks, his eyes healed and he regained vision. Perhaps due to an unidentified miracle. He would be able to become a ninja now. Fugaku-sama and Shisui had been so proud of him that they had even thrown a party in his honor, inviting the entire clan to attend. Speaking of ninjas, Naruto was confident that, being a Uchiha, he would be able to get into the academy. He and Sasuke would be eligible to join in another year, when they would be 7 years old. Then, without a doubt, he and Sasuke would both graduate at the top of the class. Since they first met, he and Sasuke have trained together because they both had similar dreams. But Sasuke's was a little bit different from his. Sasuke wanted to become the best ninja in the village and become Hokage, while Naruto just wanted to become the best ninja he could be. Though this was a noble dream, Naruto had to acknowledge that, barring a major event, it was nothing he would ever genuinely desire. Why, worse than a dog, would he ever want to defend the village that had cast him out onto the streets? No. His only goal was to become head of the Uchiha, which he could accomplish if Sasuke rose to the position of Hokage. But that was a very long way off. However, since Shisui and Itachi would be training them both simultaneously, it was still feasible. For Sasuke and Naruto, today was a significant day. Itachi and Shisui had started teaching the two ninjutsu and the value of chakras and chakra flow over the previous few weeks. The two boys were initially taught fire jutsu, which is the Uchiha's specialty, and eventually they progressed to the Grand Fireball Jutsu, which is the Uchiha's most formidable attack. Sasuke and Naruto had acquired it simultaneously, and now they planned to show it to Fugaku-sama. It goes without saying that mastering this technique was extremely important to the two of them. It was like Uchiha's coming of age. "Dude, I'm really anxious," Sasuke admitted to Naruto as they sat on his backyard deck in front of the big lake. Standing beside him, meticulously reviewing his jutsu seals, was Naruto, who wanted to master it. Naruto exclaimed, "I know," with assurance that he had committed the seals to memory, but he was still eager to practice. "But can you imagine what your dad's face will be like when he sees that we've both mastered the attack? And then we'll be full-time Uchiha. Not only that, but we'll be ahead of Shisui and Itachi. They both were able to use this jutsu after they were 6, and were months ahead of them." With butterflies in his stomach, Sasuke nodded. His only goal in life was to surpass Itachi and rise to the top of the village, but he had no idea how that could be accomplished until he met Naruto. He was constantly on missions with Shisui, so Itachi never had time to train with him, but ever since Naruto joined the Uchiha, the Hokage has been understanding and has given Shisui and Itachi fewer missions. Thus, Sasuke could now train with Shisui and his brother more frequently in addition to training with Naruto daily. "Yeah. And Itachi told me that he would teach us how to walk up walls and walk on water like real ninja if we mastered this technique. How cool is that?" Naruto sensed that someone was approaching and turned around just as he was ready to reply. Relying on his intuition, Fugaku emerged from his home with Shisui and Itachi trailing behind, and they approached the two with solemn expressions on their faces. Shisui, for example, never failed to smile. Trying to sound serious, he said, "I hear that you two have finally mastered Arcaden Jutsu," but on the inside, he was really impressed. "Show me. If this is true, then you two will prove that you have become men in the clan, even at your young ages, and you will earn the right to wear the Uchiha clan symbol on your backs with pride." Sasuke and Naruto exchanged a look and nodded, not even bothering to express their opinions. They would push each other to the limit because they would be performing the jutsu simultaneously. They moved to the dock's edge and stood beside one another, calling upon their respective chakras. Subsequently, the pair started flying through the seals in perfect harmony while contemplating in their minds. Horse, tiger, boar, ram, monkey, and horse again. Simultaneously, they inhaled deeply the surrounding air, expanding their chests and drawing chakra into them. Then, ready to blow through it, they placed one hand in a circle and held it to their mouth. Together, they let out a collective Kaden Gokakyu no Jutsu as they released their chakra. Their chakra shot through the ring in an instant, igniting into flames that spread a few feet before splitting into two enormous, equally sized balls of fire. When the two performed, Fugaku's eyes grew wide. He watched in silent wonder as the fireballs spread across the whole lake before being extinguished at the very end. There was a reason why the Uchiha considered the Great Fireball technique to be their coming-of-age jutsu. It took a lot of chakra, more chakra than any genin should have, especially not two young ones who haven't even joined the academy. Because of his insider knowledge, Fugaku wasn't as surprised that Naruto possessed so much chakra, but Sasuke had created a fireball the same size. Panting with exhaustion, Naruto and Sasuke turned to face Fugaku, Shisui, and Itachi with a smile on their faces, happy that they had managed to perform the jutsu together. Looking closer, Fugaku saw that both boys had bandages and burn marks on their faces, indicating that they had been practicing for a considerable amount of time. There was silence for a few moments, but then Fugaku slowly clapped and a smile appeared on his face. He approached the two and said, "Congratulations," moving ahead of them. He pointed to the two smiling behind him and joked, "I'm amazed at your abilities. You two could even surpass these guys with the help of the clan. Today, you, Sasuke Uchiha, and you, Naruto Uchiha, have earned the true title of Uchiha, as well as the right to wear the symbols of the Uchiha on your backs. You have truly showed your talent and potential, and I hope that you two will continue to grow and bring honor to the clan, as well as myself." Fugaku laughed and patted both Naruto and Sasuke on the back after they unexpectedly ran up to him and gave him a tight hug. Gazing down at the giggling Sasuke, Fugaku thought to himself, "I'm so proud of my son. Additionally, I'm proud of Naruto, and I know you would be too, Minato." A few weeks later, mourning sighing, Naruto turned the pages of his scrolls on his bed, completing the final one before dawn. Tan shorts and a black Uchiha shirt were on him. His blonde hair was wild and long, spiky and reaching as far down his back as Uchiha's. His shirt featured the Uchiha fan on the back in addition to the customary high collar. For Naruto, the symbol meant freedom. Now he could enter the library and rent scrolls without any repercussions. Naruto would casually show them the Uchiha clan symbol on his back, silencing them before the owner could object or say no. Nobody would be foolish enough to ignore a member of the powerful Uchiha clan. With the exception of the Hyuga, they were the most esteemed clan in Konoha and its top dogs. Just thinking about the Hyuga made Naruto frown and taste something sour. Naruto harbored equal hatred for the Hyuga as he did for the other Uchiha, who were the Uchiha's most despised adversaries. Despite the fact that the Uchiha had obviously lived in Konoha longer than they had, they would constantly attempt to undermine and outclass them. They would constantly assert that their dojutsu was superior. Hyuga clan was despised by Naruto. He couldn't help but agree with that idea, maybe because he had been around the Uchiha clan for so long. Oh no, those Hyuga. He got out of bed and went to the kitchen, where he saw Shisui preparing a big breakfast, shaking his head. "What's up, Naruto?" he inquired, swiftly emerging behind Naruto. Unexpectedly, Naruto was so accustomed to his brother's sudden teleportation that he didn't even bat an eyelid. Shisui didn't hesitate to display his superior speed. He was by far the fastest person in Konoha, if not the entire world. To irritate the child, he would constantly appear in front of or behind Naruto. However, Naruto wasn't too bothered by this. Even though he knew he wouldn't be able to learn the Shunshin until several years later, it only made him want to learn it more. Snapping to attention, Naruto asked, "Why the large breakfast?" as he sat down at their table and yawned as Shisui materialized in front of the stove once more. "Oh yeah," Shisui exclaimed, dramatically tossing the eggs. The sigh Naruto always let out when he used the Shunshin next to him was something he couldn't help but notice. "Sasuke and Itachi are stopping by for breakfast today, so I'm cooking a lot. And Itachi's bringing the orange juice." With pleasure that his friends could join him for breakfast, Naruto nodded. Just as he was reaching for a napkin, all of a sudden, he blinked and found himself standing in front of the stove. What the hell?" he exclaimed, turning to face Shisui, who was sitting where Naruto had just been and was now laughing. Naruto stammered, How the hell am I? What just happened?" Over the roars of laughter Shisui was letting out. As soon as Shisui could speak somewhat clearly, he informed Naruto. That, ha ha ha, was the Kawarimi no Jutsu, otherwise known as the substitution technique. It allows a ninja to be able to switch his body with another object, like a napkin, a log, a kunai, an exploding tag. Or another person. Shisui switched with Naruto once more just before saying this final line, causing him to topple over the chair in shock. Shisui couldn't contain his happiness at seeing Naruto lose it as he burst out laughing once more. Just as Naruto was about to yell back at Shisui, "I win," Itachi materialized in the center of the space, leaning on the counter as if he had been there just a moment earlier and gripping an orange juice container. Naruto was about to ask Itachi what he meant once more when the front door suddenly burst open and Sasuke entered the room, breathing heavily. "Hey," he exclaimed, gesturing accusingly with his finger at Itachi. "You can't Shunshin. You said it was a real race." Itachi gave a casual, indifferent shrug. "That wasn't part of the rules, Sasuke o Tuto. I simply arrived before you did, winning the race." Not wanting to argue over this, Sasuke merely sat down next to Naruto, slumping his shoulders. "Whatever. Let's just eat already." Hyuga Manor Hinata left her fox doll in her room and walked briskly to the training dojo. She wasn't looking forward to Hiyashi calling her in for more training this afternoon. Hiyashi constantly pressured her to change into someone she wasn't, but it wasn't as if he gave a damn. His only desire was for her to stand by his clan and wed Hyuga when she grew older, allowing them to unite the two bloodline boundaries and surpass the Uchiha. Hinata understood this even at the tender age of 6. As if she would ever act in that manner. The Hyuga never discussed anything but their hatred of the Uchiha, their training, and their power. In any case, what exactly did the Uchiha do to them? Hey, if there was anything the icy Hyuga disliked about the Uchiha, it was that she herself would rather be one. What a farce. Before the Hyuga ever saw her interacting amicably with the Uchiha, they would kill her first. They had even gone so far as to emblazon Uchiha clan symbols on the chests of their training dummies. Hinata was unable to fathom the number of times she had struck the fan's center, thereby ending the dummy's symbolic existence. Shaking her head, she needed time to gather her thoughts before engaging in combat with Hiyashi. She couldn't help but think about Naruto, who was starting to fade from her memory. She hadn't even seen Naruto in over a year. Ever since that night he'd come to her rescue, the Hyuga had prevented her from leaving the compound and had always made sure she was under observation. Though she didn't have Naruto to lift her spirits like she did before, it was exactly like the orphanage. The only thing she could hope for was his continued life. Hiyashi stated that the last she heard of Naruto was when the council was preparing to have him put to death at Kumo for the murder of 3 ninja. She had no idea if the council had succeeded in stopping him or if he had managed to get away and fled to another village. But there was something about Naruto that was so shrewd and crafty, like a fox, that she almost knew he was still alive. Even if he was cast out to starve on the streets, he would always find a way to survive. He would always make it. If he could somehow make it to the academy the following year with her, which was unlikely, that would be the only opportunity she would have to see him. How could someone, like Naruto, who was not a member of a clan, persuade the Hokage and the council to allow them to train as ninjas? She did, however, make one self-promise. She would put in all of her training to ensure that she wouldn't be the weaker of the two when they finally got together. she was powerless to do anything but cower behind him in fear after he had saved her that night. That is, until now, she was going to get strong. Despite the fact that Neji had already used his Byakugan and she didn't even own one, she was already at least as powerful as him. However, mastering Juken without the Byakugan was just as difficult as mastering the art of throwing a kunai without arms. Though she had almost mastered it, she still had to spend the majority of her spare time learning the locations of each chakra point on the human body. With their keen eyes, she had read numerous books on human anatomy in an attempt to become the most knowledgeable Hyuga about the body. She didn't need to use her eyes to locate the chakra points because she knew exactly what would happen if she struck one. She thought the Byakugan was a slacker. In order to avoid the necessity of the Byakugan, everyone ought to be required to learn the human anatomy by heart, just as she did. Neji concurred with her, though he was still far behind her in learning the chakra points by heart. In order to learn the Hyuga's pride and joy attack and be able to close off every single chakra point, stopping the flow of chakra, they would both learn by heart the order in which to hit the chakra points. When she arrived at the training door and got ready to open it, she sighed. She would suffer even though she knew she would be covered in tears and bruises when she left this room. She would persevere for Naruto-kun. Uchiha Complex, subsequent months standing side by side in Sasuke's spacious backyard, which was adjacent to a sizable lake, was Naruto and Sasuke. Apart from the training logs standing up here and there, it was pretty plain. After spending the majority of the morning training with Itachi and Shisui, both of them were panting heavily. Make a swish. Taking a kunai out of his pouch, Naruto exclaimed, "Watch out!" Many blunted kunai were launched from Sasuke's roof towards him, but Naruto saw them coming and deflected them with his own, proudly, in the nick of time. Naruto turned around and braced himself as Sasuke pointed out to him, there, on the lake. A few water balls were hurled in their direction as he turned, but Sasuke initiated the action this time. Kaden. Hosenka no Jutsu. Holding his hand to his mouth, Sasuke spat out several small fireballs, some of which went to the side and some of which crashed clumsily into the water. While Naruto scowled and watched where one of the fireballs was going, Sasuke grinned, pleased that he had managed to thwart the Suiden attack. They both watched in dismay as Sasuke's house was struck by the final fireball, which caused the wood on the porch to catch fire. Upon witnessing this, Sasuke swore and hurried to attempt to extinguish it with his foot, only to futilely fail. Abruptly, there was a shout from the roof, "Shit, Itachi." Shouting out, Shisui materialized in front of the porch, flying through multiple hand seals. Suiden. Suihachi. He extended his right hand without using much chakra, and a little stream of water shot out of it, safely dousing the flames and Sasuke. Now soaked and enraged, Sasuke turned back to face the giggling Shisui and prepared to pursue him when "Hey!" Fugaku emerged through the back door, and as he saw the smoke rising from the porch, everyone, including Itachi, who had just arrived, froze. "What did I say about using fire anywhere except over the lake in my yard? You could have lit the house on fire." Naruto leapt over the fence right behind Shisui, who vanished from view to avoid trouble. After observing that the two had fled, Sasuke pursued Naruto until Itachi was the only one who remained, nervously scratching the back of his head. Anyo, after escaping an enraged Fugaku, Naruto and Sasuke burst out laughing as they left the Uchiha district together. Relaxing, Naruto covered Sasuke's head with his hands and said, "What do you want to do now?" It took Sasuke no time at all to tell Naruto what he desired. Wanting to do something enjoyable, he exclaimed, "Let's go prank some people." Who wouldn't want to give it a shot after Naruto told him about all the awesome chases he had done in his younger years? Naruto chuckled and concurred with Sasuke. "Sure, I have an idea." Iruka moved quickly through Konoha's streets on her way to the academy. He was going to be placed in a new class of students in less than a month, and the year's break was almost over. The majority of his former class had recently graduated, and those who had not become genin were placed under the guidance of a new instructor. He was therefore very busy preparing his calendar for the upcoming year. He had just been put in what might have been the most significant class in history. Believe it or not, there were a lot of significant kids enrolling in his class. It appeared that every clan head had kids of the same age. Kiba, son of the head of Inazuka; Choji, son of the head of Akamichi; Ino, daughter of the head of Yamanaka; and Shikamaru Nara, son of the Jonin commander of Konoha and head of the Nara clan. But that wasn't even the end of it. He was being received by Sasuke Uchiha, the Uchiha clan's heir, Hinata Senju, a Hyuga raised by the Senju clan, and Naruto Uchiha, a member of the Konoha Uchiha and Jinchuriki. Whoa. Furthermore, he was now holding parent-student meetings with different pupils. He was supposed to speak with Hinata Senju and Hiyashi Hyuga right now to discuss their future together. It would be an understatement to say he was anxious. As Iruka turned the corner towards the academy, he became aware of something lying on the ground. He bowed down to pick it up like a good citizen, and it appeared to be a scroll of some kind. Now, who would place a scroll in such a manner on the ground? Whack! The scroll burst into ink on his face instantly, shocking not just him but most of the people on the street who were watching as well. Excited to trick their next victim, Naruto and Sasuke leapt into the water sewers, laughing aloud as they did so. Walking out of her compound, Hinata Hyuga accompanied Hiyashi on his journey. Today was the day he was supposed to meet with the teacher and formally register her at the academy. When she finally left the Hyuga compound and ventured out into the streets of Konoha, she made an effort to keep a composed and emotionless face, but it was difficult for her. That night, when she and Naruto nearly perished, was the last time she had taken a stroll through Konoha. The night he rescued her and got in trouble for it. Although she couldn't be certain, she surmised that Hiyashi was among those who supported sending Naruto to Kumo for his death. Her eyes flickered to the ground in front of her, then back to the back of his head. In any case, she would be joining the academy in less than a month, which could be advantageous or detrimental. If she didn't see Naruto again, at least she was able to spend the most of the day outside the compound. This would be her one and only chance to see him again. Rather than have to stay in the Hyuga compound, she would much rather spend her day cleaning the streets of Konoha. With a sigh, she followed Hiyashi on their stroll to the academy. Unconsciously, her gaze flitted from one person to another, hoping to meet his intensely blue eyes or his spiky blonde hair. Since Naruto had a habit of running between alleys in order to escape, she made sure to check every alleyway they passed. If only. Thieves! Hinata's head jerked to the side, where the calling had been yelled. Oh, Naruto. He had to be the one. When a Chunin passed by at that moment and dashed into a nearby alley, Hiyashi also turned his head. But with such menial business, he lost interest and kept moving forward, pulling the reticent Hinata along with him. He yelled, "I saw them come into this alley," while Hiyashi and Hinata could still hear him. Following closely behind him were two more Chunin who were scouring the alley. Did you see them? I think they had the Uchiha symbol on their backs. Hiyashi instantly stopped moving at this point, his ears perking up at the words. He turned around and silently used his hand seal to activate his Byakugan. With a cold demeanor, he said, "Come with me, Hinata," and walked back to the alley. Now Hinata was hesitant to return, saying, "I will show you how I discipline Uchiha thieves." Naruto was by himself whenever he traveled, and he was by no means a Uchiha. The Chunin stopped looking when they reached the alley and saluted Hiyashi, who had turned off his Byakugan. They all cried out, "Hiyashi-sama." But Hiyashi was indifferent. One of them said nervously, There were two Uchiha who stole something, and then they ran in here. But now they're gone." Hiyashi snorted, irritated by their lack of knowledge. He spat out, "You fools," and moved to the alley's edge. The two hopped into this dumpster. With a sly smile on his face, he approached the dumpster while Hinata remained back at the alley's entrance, unwilling to deal with this. He swiftly flung open the dumpster lid at the exact moment that whack! A huge bomb of smoke erupted, sending smoke flying straight into Hiyashi's face. The explosion was so strong that it made the dumpster jump a little. Hiyashi staggered backward, tightly shutting his eyes and clearing his throat in an attempt to expel the smoke from his mouth. The other ninja's jaw dropped and Hiyashi, the head of the Hyuga, collapsed with a fit of coughing. What had occurred moments ago? Had someone set up a trap in the dumpster? Naruto had to be that. Shortly after, Hiyashi leapt to the top of the roof with lightning speed, his Byakugan shining brightly in his eyes. Fearfully, Hinata gasped. Naruto could never outrun a Hyuga, much less Hiyashi. Happy that their prank had succeeded, Naruto and Sasuke laughed as they zip-lined down to the street level. Even though they were blind, They knew their plan had succeeded because they could hear the explosion and smell the smoke from a distance. But as they were about to enter the sewer, they stopped laughing when they heard someone land behind them. Naruto spun around just in time to witness the most vile scowl he could have imagined, supported by a formidable Byakugan and a growing rage visible in the man's veins. Naruto recognized this man immediately. He was the one who had taken Hinata. But even with those two things combined, Naruto and Sasuke couldn't stop laughing just by staring at the man. Hiyoshi's face and most of his upper body were covered in ash, and most of his hair stood up, like that of a scared cat. Evidently not amused by this, Hiyoshi threw two kunai accurately, impaling Sasuke's and Naruto's shirts and pinning their hands to the ground. Hiyoshi sauntered over to them. "You two are in for a world of hurt," and took a slow step forward. The moment Naruto and Sasuke sensed the man's pure intent to kill, they stopped laughing. As they watched, genuine fear began to rise in them, and for a brief moment, Naruto noticed movement behind the man. His eyes shot wide as they met Hinata Senju's, who had just stepped out into the alley. "Hina, make a swish." With a start, Hiyoshi watched in dismay as Naruto and Sasuke vanished from view, leaving only the kunai on the ground behind them. Carrying Sasuke and Naruto in his arms, Shisui leapt from roof to roof on his way back to the Uchiha compound, laughing as hard as they had laughed. He turned his back on two who were attempting to escape his hold and said, "You guys sure know how to get in trouble, and who to piss off. I'm sure Fugaku would be mad at you too, but then again, once we tell him just who you pranked, I'm sure he'll be just fine." After reaching the Uchiha district, Shisui brought the two miscreants back to Fugaku's residence so that they could be turned in. As Shisui threw Sasuke and Naruto to the ground and opened the main door, Fugaku questioned, "What's the matter?" Shisui smiled, getting ready to give an explanation. Trying to maintain a serious expression, he declared, "Naruto and Sasuke have been going around Konoha, pranking various people and stealing from shops." Fugaku's expression darkened, and he turned to face the wriggling victims, who instantly sat motionless. "Oh," he said, facing Shisui once more. "Please, tell me more of what they have done to bring shame to my family." Shisui gave a nod. "They tripped people, they blew ink into a Chunin's face, and worst of all, they almost got caught by the last person they pranked, who happened to be a Jonin of Konoha." Fugaku's expression grew even darker. "They attacked a Jonin? Do they even know the consequences of doing that? By law they're eligible not to be allowed to enter the academy and become ninja." Sasuke and Naruto's expressions darkened as they realized how foolish their actions had been. Shisui pretended to be disappointed in his friends as he nodded his head. "I agree, Fugaku-sama. They set off a smoke bomb right in the face of this rather important Jonin, so you can assume that he will file a report." Fugaku gave a solemn nod. "Please, tell me who they set this smoke bomb off on. Perhaps I can reason with them and they won't file a report." Shisui nodded too, getting ready to set off his own explosive. "Very well." Naruto and Sasuke set off a smoke bomb directly in the face of Hiyoshi Hyuga, head of the Hyuga clan. Shisui was struggling to contain her laughter at the expression on Fugaku's face. Yes, Hiyoshi was quite upset that he was outsmarted by two young Uchiha, especially when his entire hair was standing up and his face and upper body was covered in smoke, for everybody to see. Though a little shakily this time, Fugaku nodded. "ISC. Perhaps I will deal with this matter later." After saying that, he quickly left the room, went down the hallway, went inside his own room, and shut the door. With a confused look in their eyes, Naruto and Sasuke shrugged, relieved that Fugaku had handled it so well. But Shisui scowled in bewilderment. He had anticipated a different response from Fugaku than he had received. The only person who heard the deafening roars of laughter coming from behind a closed door was Sasuke's mother Makoto, who was walking down the hallway with a laundry bin. Assuming it was Shisui, she dismissed it and carried on with her work. After a month, night perched atop his roof, Naruto gazed out over the village below and the whole Uchiha district. The night was beautifully illuminated by the full moon overhead, highlighting Konoha's natural beauty in addition to the sounds of distant city life and wildlife chirping. He would join Sasuke at the academy tomorrow, marking a significant turning point in Naruto's development into a legendary ninja. He and Sasuke had it all figured out. They would attend the academy, graduate in 4 years, join the same team as Genin, and ideally be assigned either Itachi or Shisui as their Jonin sensei. After training, they would advance to become Chunin, Jonin, and finally, Sasuke, the head of the Uchiha. After that, Sasuke would continue his training to become a Hokage, and Naruto would assume leadership of the clan. And that was the initial action. It was really crucial. However, that was not the case. He would probably finally get to see Hinata again tomorrow, after all these years. Not in the slightest had he forgotten her. However, even as a Uchiha, he had no idea where she was in the village and certainly couldn't just stroll into every compound. He knew Hinata was the same age as him, so tomorrow would be his best chance. Kids who wanted to be ninjas had to enroll in the academy at 7 years old. Gazing up at the bright moon overhead, he let out a sigh. The moon was so strong that everything beneath it was enveloped in an unsettling glow. He would become the greatest ninja in the world one day, and he would honor the Uchiha, his clan, and those who had finally accepted him. For his people, who he considered to be his entire clan, he would stop at nothing. You possess the formula to become powerful. Curious as to why this random thought had entered his mind, Naruto inclined his head. He must not have considered it, but since it was his own idea, who else could it be? There is power within.
So this was it for today. I will continue the story in next part. Till then, we weeb offline.